stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Need approval of the county board minutes.
So moved.
I got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Anything else? Deletions, additions? All right, need a motion and a second?
So moved.
Got those? I have a motion, a second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public Health Week proclamation. Am I on? Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
The proclamation for Public Health Week, the first week of April.
State your name for the record, please.
Cindy Nienaber, Morrison
right.
County Public Health Nursing Supervisor. Thank you. Whereas the mission of Morrison County Public Health is to enhance the health and well-being of all Morrison County residents and communities by providing quality services that promote healthy behaviors, prevent disease, protect from harm, and assure access to quality health services in collaboration with community partners. And whereas the vision of the Morrison County Public Health is to assure that every individual has the opportunity to achieve and maintain optimal level of health and independence, and to lead a vital, productive life. And whereas the Morrison County Board of Commissioners are working toward a community whose citizens reflect physical, emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And whereas the many programs provided by Morrison County Public Health benefit all county residents, whether directly or indirectly, and these programs are essential ingredients of a healthy population. And whereas the Morrison County Public Health Department must continue to reach out to those in our community who seek assistance. And whereas the Morrison County Public Health must continue to promote community health and educate residents of the benefits of a healthy lifestyle. And whereas the Morrison County Public Health declares to continue to identify local public health priorities and implement activities to address the areas of public health responsibility, which include assuring an adequate local public health infrastructure, promoting healthy communities and healthy behaviors, preventing the spread of communicable diseases, protecting against environmental health hazards, preparing and responding to emergencies, and assuring health services. Therefore, be it resolved that Morrison County and the Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the first full week of April annually as Public Health Week.
I'll ask for a motion and a second for more discussion. I have a motion?
Second.
I have a second. Any more discussion, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I don't know that I can go any further than what Cindy just got done saying with her last paragraph, but public health is needed when it's needed, and when it's needed, they're there, and I can't put it any other way. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you.
We appreciate everything, Cindy. Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
I think we ought to have a picture for public.
I think we need to have a
Definitely.
picture
Photo
for
time.
public health, absolutely.
Cindy begs us all the time, I'd like a photo, right?
Take it with? All right.
What are we getting down there?
Let's do it.
Let's get her done.
Oh, sure, please.
You're on, you're live.
I mean, we want it colorful today.
How's this? Looks pretty good, huh? Looking good. Yeah. There you go. Red light. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Very, very kindly appreciate it.
All right, got it.
Hands of Hope.
Yes.
Good morning. Stephanie Ock, Executive
Morning,
Director for Hands of Hope Resource Center.
Good morning.
I think most of the commissioners are aware of the work that we do, but for anyone who is not aware, Hands of Hope Resource Center is a nonprofit serving Morrison and Todd County. We provide services to crime victims, domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and general crime. I just came to give the board an update on the services that we provide. We come in front of the commissioners a lot, especially during like April, which is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and October, which is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But we don't really talk about the kinds of work that we do, so I just wanted to take a moment just to give an update on what it is that we're doing. So in front of you, I gave you an annual report that has our financial information, our board members, some of the highlights of the things that we've accomplished in the last year for presentations. We had a big fundraising concert, first annual last year, and our second annual was this past weekend, and it was very successful. The fundraising that we do really is to supplement the funding that we get from grants to provide direct services to clients, as well as the county funding that we get, which is also very direct service focused. So the fundraising that we're doing and the additional grant writing is to go out into the schools, into the community to talk about the work that we do and services available so that students and community members are aware that we're here and that we're available to provide services both free and confidential. It doesn't cost anything for anyone to come to us. I want to thank the county for the support that we've got throughout the years, and we get that in a lot of ways. The financial support, which is a contract through social services, is really helpful for us, but we also have several board members that are county employees. Mr. Jelinski actually sits on our board as well, and we very much appreciate that. I just think that sometimes we don't take the time to just stop and say thank you, and so I just want to make sure that I do that today. If you look at the services that we provide, there's also a statistical report. It kind of gives you a better idea of the kind of services that we're providing and the types of victims that we're serving. Domestic violence is really one of the greatest number of areas that we're serving. There's a lot of people that come to us and children that are affected by domestic violence. But there are lots of other types of crimes as well. We work with a lot of harassment victims. We work with assault victims, survivors of homicide, sexual assault. We've seen an increase in the number of adult sexual assault victims that we're working with. Our referrals come from a lot of different places, mostly from law enforcement and county attorney's office, but we get calls from the hospital. We get calls from mental health, social services, a lot of different places for victims in need. The other thing that I wanted to say, too, is just every victim's circumstance is different. So we might categorize people as domestic violence, but their needs are very different. For some people, that might mean just needing support because they've been isolated from family and friends and don't really have anyone to talk to about what's going on. It might mean responding to someone at the hospital who's been physically assaulted in some way, helping someone file an order for protection or a harassment restraining order, or walking them through the court process because they've actually been physically assaulted or strangled. And so helping them understand what's going to happen next and how long the process takes. A lot of people don't understand because their glimpse of court is what they see on TV. It's a long process. Sometimes, for example, a sexual assault case can take 2 years or more to go through the entire court process, especially if the victim is a child. So with that, I just wanted to open it up to any questions or things that you have. We very much rely on the community and word of mouth, and when people have experienced abuse and have received services from us, they're usually the ones that are the best about letting people know that we exist and that we're here for services. So
I have a question.
Sure.
It states that you have over 4,500 volunteer hours.
Yes.
If somebody wants to volunteer, how would they get in contact with you? I'm sure you need a couple extra.
Sure, that's a great question. So we have, primarily we use volunteers for taking calls on our crisis line. Amanda Caping is our volunteer coordinator, and she can be reached in our Little Falls office. So that number is 632-1657, our business line. In order to take call on the crisis line, we have a training requirement that we have people go through. It's a 56-hour training that is done at their own pace, and they work with Amanda in order to accomplish that. After they've completed that training, then they are able to take call on our crisis line, and that is take the cell phone home with you, do it from home, sleep if you don't get any calls.
Right.
So for anyone who thinks that we have a call center or something like that, we don't. People don't stay up in the office and answer those calls. It's just volunteers taking the calls at home with them.
Thanks for that
so.
information.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
Anything else, gentlemen? Again, thank you for what you guys do over there. So appreciate your time and have a good remainder of the week.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, staff.
Yeah.
Where am I at here? Now, I'm going to butcher this last name, but Sanowski Family Donation. How did I do? Sanowski, there we go. See, told you I would.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Morning, Sheriff.
So I just wanted to recognize the Sandusky family. If you remember on December 9th, 2018, Fish Trap Lake, we had some thin ice, and Leonard Sandusky and his friend and neighbor, Wayne Viverick, both lived on Fish Trap Lake. They went out fishing, and unfortunately, their side-by-side ATV went through the ice. We later did a recovery effort, and we located both Leonard and Wayne. The family's here today, some of the family members. I just want to recognize Terry, the widow, Mike, Leonard's son, and Lori, Leonard's daughter. And it's kind of a big deal because I can tell you when we were on scene, they were very accommodating to us, whether it was shelter, food, anything we needed. They're right on the spot taking care of us. So at the end of the day, after the incident, the Sandusky family talked to me. It was right around Christmas time, and they said, we would like to give back to your agency. We saw your rescued efforts. We want to make a donation. So basically, they asked that all memorials be donated to the Morrison County Dive Team, and I'm happy to state that we received $4,820 worth of donations. So Sergeant Rexted, if you don't mind going up to the water rescue suit, basically with that donation money, we're able to purchase 7 additional ice rescue suits, and this is what it looks like. So it doesn't matter if it's 20 below zero, doesn't matter what the temp is, we can jump in there and we're not going to feel anything. The only thing that would be exposed would be your face, and of course, there's other things that came with the toolkit as far as a throw rope and other things like that. So Doug's in charge of he's the commander of our dive team, so he's in charge of doing the purchasing. But we thought with such a big heart that we definitely wanted to recognize them today, and we're thankful, and we want to keep them in our prayers and their family in our prayers too. And with that, I think Lori may want to say a few words, possibly.
Thank you, Sheriff Larson. Again, good morning. My name is Lori Sinoski. As a family, we want to say this donation came about last December when we saw several agencies come together sharing resources to aid in what turned out to be a search and recovery for our dad, her husband, Len Sinoski, and our good friend, Wayne Viverick. Talking with some of the rescuers, I saw an opportunity to help. Not only having the right tools, but having enough of them is very important in need. This offering is from the family and friends of Leonard Sinoski, and we want to thank everyone for their donations and all of the agencies who assisted in this recovery. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Do you want to go with the sheriff and all of them? Sean, would you like a picture maybe with the family?
Yeah, if we could do that. So I was just going to let you know, because of this, every single squad car now in our fleet will actually have an ice water rescue suit. So what it used to be is that if we had 3 or 4 cars mobile throughout the county, one car would always have a suit. Okay, and then we always had one stationed at our headquarters at the government center. So bottom line is, if you got someone out east and the incident's west somewhere, the closest suit could possibly be the government center, where now every car will have their own suit. So we truly appreciate it, and like I said, this is heartwarming because normally you don't see families showing that gratification and giving you donations and helping you out any way they can see fit. So thank you. Sam, if you want to come up, we'll do a photo. And
Just them. We're not-
how about Doug put the suit on?
I tried talking a couple other people. Where do you want to do it? Okay.
What the hell am I gonna do?
You won't fit with all this stuff on it.
Oh, what am I supposed to do? All right. All right, moving on. We are gonna address Mudfest at this time. We're also gonna have a public comment after Mudfest. We're waiting for Chelsea to get here, so she gives us her application.
I can kind of start if you
Sure,
need.
please do.
All right, we have the 2019 Mudfest application that came in. It's a little different. There are some changes from last year. I don't know if the Wrinkles want to come and address that and talk to the board about the application and about what is included in it. That
And we'll
would be
have you
a-
address at the podium, please.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Ralph Wrinkle, one of the partners of Mudfest. The application is for a money event again for this Memorial Weekend. And basically, there shouldn't be any changes from prior years. We just, it's self-explanatory, it reads what it reads. We ask for the same number up to 3,500 people on grounds maximum and 3,000 per day.
So what you asked for this year, though, is different than what was approved last year. So maybe highlighting those changes in terms of how the event.
I guess the only thing that's ever changed is we're always stuck on the number of people we have on grounds at one time. Depends on what day of the week it is or whatever.
So if I may, Ralph or Deb, what's the numbers from last year that you asked for and the difference between last year and this year? I know that.
If we could talk about what's approved last year, not so much asked
Yeah,
for.
approved, yeah. What was approved last year?
There was a total of 3,000 maximum amount of tickets that were sold for the entire weekend, with the daily maximum not to exceed 2,600 for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the event. Wednesday it was 100, Thursday was 500, and Monday was 500. So the numbers are different in terms of what was approved. And there are some differences in the safety plan that was presented too. So I don't know if you wanted to address that or not.
Jake, you want to address the safety part? The numbers?
Hi, my name's Jacob Wrinkle. The things that was brought up or anything in the safety plan here was the same proposal that we put together with Sheriff Larson that we handed to him prior on our meeting. So everything that he has seen was there, the same documentation that he had this spring when we talked. So, last year we had proposed some things like that coming into the meeting, whatever else like that, but some of that stuff went back to the old ways. So when we're getting into the details of which line or where we're at there, that's all. So we asked for the 3,500 people. When we're talking about the other safety details or whatever else like that, there was just the little minor changes there. But he's seen all that here, the last proposal on his sheet. So, and all that stuff was highlighted the last time when he talked about it. So this is the same plan from, you know,
So this, what you're saying is this is the same plan that was approved last year by the board?
this was the same plan that we were talking about on our last meeting that we were in here for our planning
I
meeting.
just wanted you to clarify that.
Yep.
So this has not been approved yet by the board.
No.
Some of the differences of what was approved last year and what was presented this year, just if I could take a second with that, was to include the race-type ATVs that wouldn't be allowed. No, the current plan has no beverages of any sort being transported, instead of just no visible open alcoholic beverages. So previously, we'd have no beverages at all on that except water for working staff. So it's changed now to have no visible opened alcoholic beverages. And I think Sheriff Larson can address that later, but there are a couple of things that didn't happen this past year that he would like to see in terms of reporting when it comes to incidents that occur, but he can address that maybe later with the differences there, but minor, but a few.
Right. Gentlemen, do you have anything else to offer at all on this at this time?
Nope, I got nothing at this time.
Okay.
Neither do I.
Chelsea, do you have anything for us on this application?
I do have one request.
Sure, if you want, let them stand there, and if you want to go have a chair over here, please do.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chelsea.
Good morning. I just have one request from the difference from last year on the variances and the conditions. One condition would be to have our bond and insurance in hand in the auditor treasurer's office by the beginning of the month of the event, so May 1st. And then also I was looking at the our ordinances and looking at the dates and then the hours. I was looking at the safety plan, and in our ordinances, it states that we should have a clear dates and times of the event. So I didn't know if we were going off of just the security plan that we have here, just to clarify that.
If I may, Chelsea, what is the reason that you're asking for this bond before by May 1st?
Last year, we just had it where it was a couple days prior to the event that we had the insurance and the bond. So just to ease of mind, so we're not waiting until a day or two before the
And I'm
actual
assuming,
event.
gentlemen, that would be okay with you guys?
Can I address that situation?
Yes, please.
Year ago, we lost our insurance. We had to find a new insurance company to rewrite the policy, which we found a new insurance company to rewrite the policy. The bond can be just done anytime. The bond can be delivered to the county at any time. Last year, yes, it turned out to be only 3-4 days prior to the event. Most of the time, they don't issue the certificates or the official certificate until a week prior before the event. I can ask this new agent if it's possible to have the certificate issued sooner than that.
That would be great.
And this is something I don't know, you gentlemen, I'd want to put in Chelsea's hands to address that, and if it's okay with you, then it'll be okay with myself personally, so.
Yep, I think that's great, and I know that last year was a little bit different, but I don't see a problem this year, just as long as we have that in hand before a couple days prior to the event.
I'm just saying that's what the certificate, that's how
Yep,
how the insurance company writes it, so.
So a week before is reasonable then, because that's
Yes.
when it's issued?
Would we put that down as a condition if it becomes approved? Or
The approval would be conditioned upon the issuance of they're required to have the bond and the
Right.
insurance, so I think that would be reasonable.
put a
condition.
week before,
Yep.
you know, so, okay. Anything else, Chelsea?
And then the timing, that's a good point.
vacation of the hours of
it-
operation.
I don't know that we have a start time with that, but it identifies that the noise is done by 1 a.m., and that's been the case for a number of years. I don't know that we have when the events start in the day. Trying to look if it's
Gentlemen,
addressed
do
at
you
the
have
beginning.
an official day when yours starts? Like, I know you have people come in X amount of days before, but do you have an official time when it starts?
Friday through Monday.
Do you have a time?
Friday at midnight or whatever else like that, so.
Friday at midnight.
Friday at midnight or the gate, so
So Thursday,
12:01.
12:01.
So, Mr. Chair, just to clarify then, no ticket holders will be allowed on the event site prior to that time?
No, there will be people on the grounds prior to that time, so in the conditions that you guys had offered or whatever else last year is that we had to be underneath that number of people for those small amount of patrons to be on the grounds.
Well, actually, the event starts when the guests start arriving, so I suggest that the start day actually be when the guests are allowed on the site. And if it's Thursday, that should be the start time.
Mr. Chair, so there's early entry to set up their camps, but they're not participating in the mudding events until Friday. So I guess if you would like to extend that to that when they're bringing campers on, but they're not out there doing any of the activities until Friday.
So the ATV trails and stuff aren't open until Friday?
That's correct. That was what the commissioners and stuff we have talked about a couple years ago. None of that has changed, so none of the trails, so that the mud pits and stuff like that were, closed due to that day.
And I'm assuming that because of the insurance, we need a start time because if somebody happens to go out with an ATV before the official start time, is there going to be a liability there?
I would assume the thing gets shut down at that point. I don't know.
To me, the event starts when the paying guests
Right.
arrive on site. So I would like to know when that is allowed, and that, in my mind, is the start time for this event.
And I will go with our attorney here, so is that something that, well, not something, I would request that you give us a start time when we have your first ticket holder there. Again, that's my opinion, gentlemen. I revert to you guys if you want to have other discussion about that start time.
I guess that would be 12:01 Wednesday morning. I mean, they don't expect to have people there, but Wednesday is when they allow people to start bringing campers in.
So May 22nd? Wednesday, May 22nd is,
23rd, I think.
This is from
that
last
last
year.
year?
I was
Oh,
just
that's
giving
last
an
year.
idea on the
Okay.
attendance that we had, not on the days, and I don't have my calendar up here.
I'm just looking at the date.
22nd,
Yep,
yes.
the 22nd.
Second's a Wednesday, yep. Is that okay with all parties?
And then ending,
Yeah.
is it on Monday?
It's on Monday, that's
And what
correct.
time do we have for that? Again, I got to stress this time. I know it sounds piddly, but we need time in there too.
6 p.m. on Monday.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, one thing we talked a lot about when we were at the planning session was the tickets and accounting for that, and you were to come back with a process for that. With the board had asked for kind of how you intended to get a good number and get a good count, and whether or not you have pre-printed pre-sale tickets, or how you were going to propose that. And so I didn't see anything in the application that addressed that request.
Yep. One thing, with the waiver form counting or whatever else like that we've had, a 2-hour conversation on that process or whatever else like that. We can go back to the old way with the scanners of the IDs, so when somebody shows up and you want that number right now, as soon as possible, well, that number was there between, on the scanner. So that's one possibility that we can go back to that way.
And that wouldn't account for anybody who doesn't have an ID though, correct?
That's correct.
So that would only be,
So,
But again, I'm going to address this one, and Commissioner Jelinski, I hope he agrees with me, because we discussed this many times over the years. You don't sell tickets, you don't give tickets to anybody. So again, this always bothered me that you guys, over all these years, you're jeopardizing your permit here because we want something that you guys can give us some hard numbers. You have a great facility there, you have worked well with Hillman, and you're jeopardizing all these things that you do for the community by myself asking, give us some ways to get some exact numbers. And I don't understand. You don't take credit cards. I don't think you take checks. You just take cash. Am I not correct?
We take checks.
Okay, so you take checks, but
Yep.
you have no ticket where you tear off. I mean, I could give you 3,000 tickets and say, here you go, 1 through 3,000. 1 comes in, here you go. Here 2 comes in. You can use bands. I don't understand the complication here. I really don't. And again, we can get into this. You don't have this. That has always been a concern of mine. I believe it's a concern of the sheriffs because of the fact of the numbers. I have people call me. You have 5,000 people there. You have 10,000. I have no idea how many. I've been out there too. Again, you cannot tell. No one can tell me. And I was out there. And you guys, people were coming through the line, and you had these people looking at, handing them the sheets. And then whoever was working it, there's people going through. It's a cluster, gentlemen. It's a cluster. And again, for counting these people, you do not have a great system to count these people. Enough said. I don't know if you gentlemen have anything else to say about it.
We need a number count. It's not rocket science here, ladies and gentlemen. We need a number count. Sheriff needs a number count. If the sheriff needs a number count, I need a number count. Simple as that. Not a secret.
So Mr. Chair, if I could ask, have you started selling tickets already?
No.
No, okay.
Don't sell
So
tickets.
do you have a thought on selling tickets or somehow to be able to keep track of the number of people? I think that was what the board was looking for last time we met.
Yep, like I said, we can go back to, I don't understand where, but we can go back to the waiver forms, or we can go back to the ID scanners. If I were to do per wristband, that is, because I've got X amount of wristbands in an envelope for every time that it goes up there, because they're all valued or whatever else like that. So 100 of those just don't go missing or whatever else like that. So we keep track of all that stuff or whatever else. So it ain't just as I've got a box of 3,000 wristbands just sitting here, because I've got dailies, I've got daily camping, I've got daily, I got underage dailies, I've got camping for the weekend, and I've got camping for underage, so we're able to keep track. So it ain't just by that. So, somebody has mentioned, is like, well, I'll have a roll of tickets there. Well, that's another person. Now you're going to give them a wristband, and then now you're going to give each person a ticket. And then later, somebody's going to be up there. He's like, well, you didn't give that person a ticket, and then I can just see the issues in the struggles there. So I just don't understand. We can beat this up all day again. I mean, we did this
But
last
again,
time. We're
I'm
just
not
trying
Jacob.
to
Here's the point.
compromise
I've been to facility I've had 2 or 3 wristbands put on me. 1 is my number count. 2 is I'm old enough to drink. 3, I can go over here. And so if you're talking about, you have this person coming in during the day, if everybody would get a pink for their number count, okay, now you're underage. Now you get a yellow wristband. Because they do that at these other places. Again, I'm just frustrated. Gentlemen, anything else? We're going to be opening this up to public comment. If you gentlemen would like to take a chair, I'd appreciate that. We'll give everybody 3 minutes to have a public comment. So at this time, I'll be opening it up to public hearing. And what time do we got here? 9:34. So I'll be asking 3 times. If no one else wants to come up to the podium, please state your name. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Again, this is we want to keep it nice, and we don't want everything to get out of hand, so please respect other people's comments if they have them. So again, at this time, I'll ask for anybody who has any comment to make on the Mudfest.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. My name is Gary Gutwell, and we are one of the local people right across from the Mudfest. I brought some pictures here I'd like to show the commissioners of their dust control. And these are all taken from our yard. Okay, he said Wednesday, no noise. Wednesday night, we should have a sheriff out there, because on Wednesday night, the mud trucks run all night long, and then they get the drunken people out there, and they roar their engines 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Last year on the Saturday night, when they had the air ambulance coming there at 1:45, at 2 o'clock, a pickup pulled in my horseshoe driveway, right? 2 people got out of the pickup and laid right in front of my house. Okay, I was going to take a picture of the pickup and them people, and I'll just wait to see if they break in the house. The pickup took off back south. The 2 guys laid in my lawn for 15 minutes, and I took off walking back across to the Mudfest. At 3 o'clock in the morning, they're shooting dynamite off, 8 sticks of dynamite or something over there. Now, this is at 3 in the morning. They drive their mud trucks up and down the road. We got proof from the State Highway Patrol, and it is statute Statute 169-73. Their mud trucks are illegal to drive on any public road. So I asked him, how can we do this? He said, well, take pictures. I said, well, I can't be there all the time. He said, take trail cameras and put up. So we're going to put trail cameras up this year. If our trail cameras disappear, you know where they went. So, no, but they said there nothing goes on Wednesday night. Wednesday night is full bore hell over there. So I don't know where they're getting this nothing goes on Wednesday. They're full of crap. But no, that's their dust control. Then last fall, there was no dust control because they said they had under 500 people. Well, who was there to count the 500 people? You don't get a good count in the springtime. How do you get it in the fall? And the last fall, there was absolutely no dust control. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Again, anyone else would like to make a comment? Please state your name.
Kelvin Beamer. My wife and I, we farm a mile south of the Mudfest site, and last year when you implemented the number of tickets or entrance there, limited it to what Sean Larson was recommending, it made a difference in the amount of traffic we get past our farm. In the past, people would get bored up there or whatever, they'd be tearing around. We didn't have that incident last year because of the number of tickets. People tended to stay there. But I can't imagine what Gary and Tammy and Clyde and Terry Kapsner go through. Clyde lives, his house is 100 feet from the road that everybody's got to drive by. There's traffic all hours a day, how long, you know, and I guess I don't know why we can't come up with a compromise where they're allowed one event a year and it alternates between Memorial Day and Labor Day. That would give the neighborhood and the Sheriff's Department a Memorial Day off every other year. I've proposed it in the past, and it hasn't gone anywhere, but that would be a suggestion I would have, because we deserve to be able to have a decent Memorial Weekend, too. And as far as whatever you do today, I strongly recommend you do whatever Sheriff Larson recommends, because, like I said, we didn't have many incidents last year, but according to his sheriff's report that was printed in the paper, it was a little different up at the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments that anyone may have? That was my first call. Do we have any more comments? It's my second. Any more comments? We'll close the public comment hearing at this time. Okay, moving on. Sheriff, would you have any information you'd like to give? You got your hands are full. I see that. So go right ahead.
I just got a couple handouts.
And Chelsea, I need you to stay there. Yeah.
Don't run away.
Okay, I'm in last seat.
Tabitha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Yes, thank you.
Ryan, thanks, Brian. Gary, do you want these back? Okay, all right.
Media got their copy, Deb. The media got their copy. Okay. Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I'd just kind of like to give a summary of what I'm handing out here.
Please do.
Okay. So everybody will have basically 3 separate handouts. We'll start with the first one. It's labeled Mudfest May 2018 Citations Issued. 1, 2, 3, I believe there's 4 actual documents that are stapled together. There's another handout that's labeled Incidents Reported by Security Specialists. It's kind of a longer piece of paper. That's your second handout. And then the third one I'm going to be referring to is one titled Mudfest Memorial Day 2018 Post Report. And that report is from Mudfest Security Specialists that they gave me. So these will be the 3 different documents that I refer to as we go through this presentation, I guess. So to begin with, let's just start with the Mudfest May 2018 citations issued. If you turn to the last page, you can see we kind of tallied up all of our totals. And on the very last page, you'll see that there was 12 minors ages 17 or younger that were charged for minor consumption. You'll see next to that figure, the number 64, that was 64 people who were cited for minor consumption who were in the ages of 18 to 20. So we had a total of, if I do my math right, 76 minors, or 76 personnel who were cited for minor consumption. So the only thing, I reached out to all my deputies, every single person working the event, and I said, how many of those people were brought to us by the security specialists? And it was 0. So I have an issue with that, because if we're walking around and there's only a handful of us, deputies, licensed deputies on the grounds, and we're seeing this, I'm assuming the security specialists would see this as well. But again, not one deputy told me that there was a minor who was spotted with a drink in their hand turned over to us.
If I may, gentlemen, do you guys want to let him continue with each one, or do we want to address each one that he brings up? It's up to you guys. So in this case, he's bringing up minor consumption. Should we let him just say this whole thing and then ask the questions? It's up to you guys.
Well, Mr. Chair, to avoid confusion, it would seem to me that we would be able to address what the sheriff is saying as he moves forward, one item at a time.
Would that be okay with you, Sheriff?
Absolutely.
All right.
To that point, Mr. Chair.
Click.
Thank you.
And just to
Sheriff
help,
Larson.
just to help to stay on task, let's just address the minor consumption if that's the case. So if we go above and beyond, I'm sure let's let him address that first. So
To his point, not so much on the minor consumption. I'm not getting at that. I'm getting at so since last year, and with this proposal in front of us now. So what communication have you had, Sheriff Larson, with the security specialists on the statement that you just gave us, that of the 76 individuals cited for minor consumption, what's the security specialist response to that?
Their response was, let us know what the timeframes were, and we can basically get more staff for those hours. But as you can see in this handout, number one, I never gave them this handout, so in their defense, they don't have it in front of them until today. But you'll see that the number of incidents, I guess this one doesn't include a timeline, I apologize, but I do have a, does the one you have a timeline? It does. Okay.
It has the time of the call.
Yeah, perfect. So that's kind of what I want to point out. This is a, get rid of that one. It'll show the timeline, and basically it's really, the first one is at 11:27 a.m. on the 25th, and it goes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it stops. actually, I'm sorry, it continues. It goes 7, 8, and of course, when I say the numbers, there's more than just a handful of these in between. So you can see on the 25th, all the way up to, let's see, you got multiple citations at 9 o'clock, multiple citations at 10 o'clock.
Sheriff, if you don't mind me interrupting you, I'm gonna go to where I'll take us to where I want to go. So you made the statement that there were 76 individuals cited for underage consumption, and none of them were brought forward by the security team that's hired to be on those grounds outside of the county sheriff's department. So if they're not bringing these people and this activity is going on there, so what are they doing? What are they supposed to be doing? And how much confidence are we supposed to have in their presence there? Can you answer that, Mr. Sheriff?
Well, it's tough for me to answer because security specialists, as I believe, I don't think they're here. Well, they are. Perfect. So he may be able to answer that question better than I can.
That's fantastic. Mr. Chair, can we bring that gentleman
happy
forward?
to, Randy, if you mind coming up and address the question. Again, you please state your name.
Randy Beeler with Security Specialists. Well, I guess to answer that question, the reason the deputies are more involved with the minor consumption, for one, the deputies can issue a ticket, and that's much more effective than with security specialists. If we catch minor consumption, we can take the wristband, but if they're intoxicated, we obviously can't throw them out. We got to try and find them a ride home. The difference that the deputies are doing too versus security specialists, we treat their camper and their campsite as a home. Unless I get called into that area because of an altercation or something going wrong, that security is called into that campsite, we don't go in searching for the minors. The deputies were walking right into the campsites looking for that. If I'm sitting at home having a beer with my minor child, the deputies would never know about it. And that's the way we treat the campsites on grounds that way. That's their home. As long as we're not called in there for some particular reason, we don't go in searching. But if we are in there and we see the minors, then we address the issue.
Commissioner Zelinski.
Sheriff, if I'm understanding, if I'm on the right page here, you had 76 incidences in 2018 of underage consumption.
Yes, sir.
All of those were generated by your staff. None were generated by security specialists. And I don't know if you have this in front of you. In 2017, were there any incidents generated by security specialists involving underage consumption brought to your attention or your staff's attention?
I'd have to look back, and I can't say for sure 2017, Commissioner, but I can tell you in the past, they've been instructed if they find a minor who's drinking, to bring them directly to us, because we know there's limitations. We know they can't write out a citation, but they're also aware that we can. And if it's brought to our attention, we'll deal with it appropriately.
Sheriff, are you familiar at all in 2017, were there any underage consumption individuals brought to your staff's attention? Do you have any recollection of that?
I don't have the
very good.
statistics
Thank you.
in front of me, sorry.
All right, Sheriff, if you'd like to move on, please.
Absolutely. If I can address Randy's issue, and I'm thankful that he's here to address that, but at the end of the day, we're not going through campers. We're not going through tents. Are we going through some campsites? Absolutely. We're going to show a presence, and I would expect the same from security specialists as well. But that's not where we're finding all these minors. These minors are just standing right out in front of us, and then you got herds like cattle running away. So, yeah, we caught 74 people. There's probably another 174 that never got cited because we never caught up with them. So just wanted to address that. The second issue, if we're ready to move on from the minors, would be the ATV. And that's the sheet it's kind of a longer sheet. It says it's incidents reported by security specialist. Now, this is not dated for 2018. This is data that I'm using from Memorial Weekend 2017. And the only reason I'm using this data from 2017 is because I don't have any data from 2018 from security specialists. And I'll get into that in a second. So, what I wanted to do is just highlight some of the information regarding ATVs. If you refer to your handout, you will see on this incident report that there was 114 incidents that were noted. So if you look at your top chart and you see the totals per day, there was 114 incidents that security specialists reported on their activity log sheet. I didn't make a copy for everyone of their activity log sheet, so what I did was really took a picture of it and took all the data and put it on this form. But I do have the log sheet with. So starting from left to right on that top graph, these were incidents reported by security specialists when they're logging people with contact on ATVs. That's what this is about. There was 11 minor consumptions. There was 20 excessive speed. There was 18 reckless driving reports. There was 28 people who were caught on an ATV with an open container. And then you can see across there's warnings, no plates, disorderly, medical, mudding. I assume that would be someone mudding where they're not supposed to be. Otherwise, why would contact be made? But I guess I can't clarify that. And then there was 23 unknowns. In other words, there was contact with 23 more ATVs, but there was nothing written down. So now if you look at the action taken, that's the graph underneath. On Friday, Saturday, Sunday of Memorial Weekend 2017, you'll see that there was 77 pulled bans. Now, the board's been here when Mudfest has done their presentation. They informed us that if someone's warned and they don't want that ATV out and about anymore, they're going to pull that band. So this data shows they pulled 77 bans. So to me, that means 77 ATVs are out of commission. And then if you continue on, you'll see there's verbal warnings. They impounded some of the ATVs. They took keys. Whatever they had written down on their log sheet, I made a column for. So now I want to take this sheet and I want you to remember what we just went over, and I want you to refer to Mudfest Memorial Day 2018 post report. Now, I reached out to Mudfest personnel and I said, I need your activity for 2018 Memorial Weekend regarding your ATV report, because last year it was busy. I want to see your contacts this year. I think it sums it up in this first paragraph that I'll read out loud if you want to follow along. This year, and this is from security specialists, this year we decided not to have a dispatcher. We tried it in 2017 and determined it to be an unnecessary position. We provided security starting on Thursday, even though the event didn't start until Friday. Now, we can go further into this, which let's skip down to paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I gotta find it here. Okay, I'm sorry, paragraph 3. There was an ATV accident, so I'll read that paragraph 3 to you. On Friday, we stayed busy by making rounds of the campgrounds, visiting with patrons, and just making our presence known. We talked to people and reminded them of the rules and let them know that we were all about keeping the event safe. The only report that we had on Friday was an individual that rolled his ATV. Medical was on scene and he was taken to the first aid station and treated for injuries. The ATV was parked at his campsite and security kept his keys until he is ready to leave for the weekend. And I already talked to Randy about this. I said, we mentioned this in years past. This is a state law. You gotta let law enforcement know. If there's damage to exceed $500 or personal injury, which in this case there was, and last year there was personal injury, we need to be notified. It's the law. So there's no way around it. And at the end of the day, we weren't notified. Randy's aware of it. He informed me that this was more than likely because, as it states, the first responders and/or the EMTs came across this accident, and then they notified security. So in other words, they weren't the ones who came across this. They were called to the scene by medical staff. Anyway, at the end of the day, there's so many acres covering. Law enforcement didn't know anything about this. So that was just another issue that I wanted to bring up. So what I'm getting at is the ATVs, if you follow along on this chart, it's a major distraction out there. And you can't say there isn't. And when I talked to Randy about it, he said, well, we had the same activity as last year, but we didn't want to put a dispatcher in place because this is a smaller event compared to like BIR, which I agree, but it's still a lot of activity taking place. So based on that, I have two options that I would basically propose to the commissioners as far as if this event is going to take place. Because number one, I want to eliminate issues with minors. Number two, I want to eliminate the distractions of ATVs. I feel like I'm being fairly reasonable here. I get it that the Mudfest personnel probably won't agree with this, but my proposal is proposal number one, keep the number at 2,600, just like last year, and the number of tickets sold at 3,000, which I still feel is generous because last year we had a meeting and I was told overall the event they sold 2,700 tickets. So 3,000 obviously exceeds that. The stipulation would be no one under age 21 years old allowed at the event. That's option one. So everything's the same, just no minors allowed. Again, no one 20 years old or younger allowed at the event. Option two, keep your juveniles, keep everybody. It's a family-friendly event, I've heard that before, but eliminate ATVs, because I just told you how much of a distraction it is. And if you eliminate the ATVs and you keep the same amount of law enforcement on scene, you keep the same amount of security specialists on the scene, there should be more of a focus then on the juveniles present and the minors who are drinking. I think there would be a better handle on the situation. So that's kind of my options right now. I laid it out, option one, no minors allowed, period. Option two, no ATVs allowed, but you can have the minors. Because again, I believe then security specialists working with us would have more time to actually focus on the issues that we just presented today. That's all I got.
Gentlemen, any more questions or comments for the sheriff?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Lemire.
Approximately a month ago, we had this discussion.
Yep.
And there was some of us here that said it'd be a good idea for you to work with the sheriff to make your compromises so that you and the sheriff are on the same page and to approve and to go by what the sheriff's safety plan is. Otherwise, there was many of us that weren't going to support something other than the safety plan of the sheriff. With that being said, have they met with you since our last meeting?
They have not. There's been a couple emails. One was I wanted to know every single event that was taking place, and I wanted to nail down the times. The second email was I wanted their ATV incident report, which in return I got their Mudfest Memorial Post report that I handed out. Nothing to do with ticket sales. That was basically the whole entire portion, or more or less discussion at the last meeting.
Yes.
So that's where we're at. No, they have not.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, Sheriff, if I'm understanding this correctly and I'm looking at it, 2017, 114 incidences involving ATVs, am I correct?
Correct.
In 2018, one reported incident in the 2018 post report of an ATV, and that's it? Am I correct?
Well, I think if Randy was to talk on that, I'm assuming he would state, no, there was activity, but this was a smaller event, so we didn't feel there was a need for a dispatcher and to log all our activity.
Might have been a smaller event, very possibly so, but there's only one event or one incident involving an ATV in the report that you handed out here. Am I
Correct,
reading?
Commissioner.
Okay. Thank you very kindly.
Anything else, gentlemen? I have a question, Sheriff. You bring up these 77 pulled bands from ATVs. And again, I hope Commissioner Jelinski acknowledges that we discussed this probably about the ATVs when they didn't have the ATVs. And again, I'm going to speak for the Wrinkles on their half, is that, their numbers would go down without having the ATVs there because of the fact that that's what brings a majority of their people, or not majority, whatever word we want to use, brings more people with using of the ATVs. And again, I'm going to, hopefully Commissioner Jelinski agrees with me, we did a lot of things to make it safer for the ATVs, putting high flags on them and that sort. Moving ahead now, would you consider a plan 3, I guess? Because I agree with you, Sheriff. These ATVs are a problem. They've been a problem before we allowed them to have them. We allowed them to have them, and now they're being a problem again. They can't keep a handle on it. If you have 77 pulled ATVs out there, there's a lot of them out there. That's my opinion. And with this many people out there, I think that would be obviously a great safety hazard for anyone that's addressing that. Would you say if the ATVs were not allowed, just putting that out there and we can have discussion, they requesting to raise the numbers? Would that be an option? Again, maybe we don't need to have them ask that, but if they're asking for, what is the numbers here, 35 or whatever is total, I just, in my head, if the ATVs are not allowed there, probably be a little less incidences out there that maybe the Sheriff's Department could handle. Just an option. I'm opening that up for discussion.
Mr. Chair, I guess my comment to that would be, if the system doesn't work, it needs to be fixed, and that's my job, is to oversee what are the issues, what are the problems, how do we get a handle on this? I'd prefer we get a handle on it. And speaking with the Mudfest coordinators, technically they never had over 2,600 people. So if you're going to remove ATVs, I don't know why we would need to put that number up any higher, because they struggled to get their 2,600 for a number. So I guess I'm set at keeping those numbers the way they are.
And again, to address that number thing, everybody knows it's my issue. We don't know really what the numbers are. That's probably why they're trying to request it. When they were saying 26, this is an assumption. It's not a guarantee, but we don't know really what the numbers are. And that's my opinion. So if you might be out there with all your people right now with 3,500 people because you don't know, you know what I'm saying? So who knows where the numbers are? So I don't know if you gentlemen, you have any more comments on all this? I would like to also have one of the members of Hengels to come up and address these options. Not yet, but to see if the board has any questions or concerns or comments.
Mr. Chair, for the record, Sheriff, you don't support the proposed plan that is before us today, correct?
Correct.
And also, there's been incidences of your deputies being physically assaulted also on the grounds, correct?
Absolutely. Last year, there was at least a couple instances, one where deputy had to wrestle someone. Someone else came from behind and assisted that party, and then one where a beer bottle got thrown at a deputy. And then there's a number of other incidents, Commissioner, that come into play. The helicopter rides by a civilian organization that I didn't even know about, that I'm supposed to approve on the safety plan, that I found out later about. And then we had the issue with trying to get an accurate count of the waivers to see how many people were actually on the grounds, and then we had someone hiding the waivers on us. So there was a lack of cooperation and transparency.
Correct. So until we change, until we change your safety plan, it has to be proved to us that they can handle what is being proposed and what is being brought before us, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff.
If somebody from the Hinkles would like to come up, Wrinkles, what did I say, Hinkles? Would like to come up, reps, please address the board, do not address the Sheriff's Department. This is a comment, not a questions and answers. So if you have any, I'll give you 3 minutes.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I'm Adam Ripple, attorney for the Wrinkles. Been here a few times. At this point, I think the Wrinkles would like to request that this decision be continued. Both of these conditions being proposed have essentially been sprung on us today. Feels a bit like an attempt to deny the permit through conditions rather than an outright denial, and we need an opportunity to go back and consider these conditions that are being suggested to be able to provide a response and to the extent necessary revise the application, I guess, but looking to just be treated fairly and have an opportunity to respond to these issues, being able to put some thought into them anyway.
And I want to apologize that you're the applicant, so you got more than the 3 minutes to speak if you have anything.
Yeah, that's fine. So I would like to request that the board continue any decision on this permit at this time.
Anything else?
That's it.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
If I may, before we move forward, I'll clear. Brian, I'd like your input on this one.
So it's my understanding they're asking to table the matter. How long, Mr. Ripple, until?
When's the next board meeting?
2 weeks.
In 2 weeks? Yeah. Would that be sufficient time?
I would assume so, yes.
Don't imagine you'd want it much later than that because you have to plan for the event as well.
And Mr. Chair, I think just clarification on what you're considering, because there are a few things that I think we talked about. One being the ticket numbers and how to manage that, because we haven't seen a response or any type of way to address that has been different from the past, because it's been pointed out a number of times that hasn't worked very well. And then the options that Sheriff Larson suggested today with the minors and the ATVs, correct?
Gentlemen, Commissioner Wilson.
I would also like to have the dust situation remedied. I know every year I've asked about the dust, and when I have gone out there, when I was out there, the roads were watered. You know, but I did have a gentleman call me last night, and he's got a good point, that campers and stuff start coming in the weekend before, that it would be nice if a guy could put water on the roads, because that dust issue is a big issue. It maybe doesn't affect your event, but it does affect the people that live around there. And there's been times when I've seen it. I wish you could chloride the whole road to have it done, but you also can't take it up and it's there for the year. But I really want to see the dust issue. And when I come to incident report, you know, there's a lot of incidents here, but let's remember, if there's 3,000 people out there for the event, we're talking about 3% of incidents. So, I mean, the numbers sound like a lot, but for the people that are there, if my math is right, I think that's about 3%. Not that I approve of any of that, but I would like to get this thing straightened out to the fact that, you know, Wrinkles put on a decent event. The event that they run out there, I've been out there, and I feel the event, they're doing very well on. There's a lot of people out there. I find it curious that the security didn't bring anybody forward and the sheriffs had to find all that, you know, because that doesn't sound like things are working together. But so I guess, and I'm going to support the sheriff's plan, whatever that may end up being when we're done, because I'm not going to go against the sheriff's plan. But I also want to see Mudfest go and continue. I have people comment why we work so hard on keeping people away from this event. I just wish that I wish we could come to something that we don't have to go through this every year. You know, there's a lot of people, and I get a lot of calls out there for people supporting Mudfest, for the fact of all the money that it brings into the Legion and everybody. So I do get calls of support. I also get a few calls against it, but I get more in support of it, the calls that I've received. So, but I do think the dust issue is a big issue, and I want to see what comes up with the other things that you guys are suggesting. So,
Commissioner Blaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few questions, few concerns, and maybe a clarification. I don't think this board is looking at trying to find reasons to deny a permit. or are going to stand behind some kind of conditions. We can make a decision, I certainly can, on my own, one way or the other. When we met about a month or so ago, and this was my first exposure to this issue, and I'm still on the learning curve with a lot of things, but I thought we were fairly clear at that meeting that we would help you kind of have some directive or help set some directive to use so that when we got together today, these issues, there would be a plan and these issues would be addressed, and there would have been communication with the sheriff over this. And we would not have to have a continuance, but I'm glad that you recognize that there's still opportunities for things to be addressed, and I want to give you the opportunity to do that. And but when we met a month or so ago, one of the big issues was being able to have an instantaneous count. If you come back here, I'm going to go out on the proverbial limb and say, if you come back here with the idea that we're going to have waiver sheets and the sheriff's going to count them to get a count, this ain't going to happen. Or there won't be a vote for me on that to happen. We had talked about options about looking at how other large events are handled, and it's one of the things that we need to have this handled. I'm still going to have to try and get my arms around the relationship between the security specialist and the sheriff's department, and I'm not going to stand here and say I'm going to side with the sheriff or not side with the sheriff. I'm going to side with public safety. So either this thing's going to be safe or it's not going to be. Someone will have to help me understand, because I've never been out there. So we have ATVs driving amongst the crowd, or do we have ATVs in a specified area? You talking? So somebody help me. We have a proposal that says we're either not going to have ATVs on the grounds or we're going to have ATVs on the grounds. I'm assuming that we don't have ATVs driving around throughout the public or through campsites or whatever. They're in a design
if you can address that, please.
area.
I can address that. It's just like a campground. You have a lot of campers out there. Their ATVs are at their campground. They drive to a pit or a trail that they're allowed to drive them on. You don't push them over there. So they go from their home for the weekend and they drive it to the trail or to the pit that's a designated area to drive these vehicles. Does that help you understand that? And
I think so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, please.
Okay. So where these ATVs drive, though, is on a designated roadway, trail, whatever. So we're not driving them around through the public.
Mr. Chair, they're parked at their campsites, just like the mud trucks can be parked at their campsites. They have to be escorted back and forth according to a condition, but these vehicles are among the campsites and then the people that are attending. Yeah, right? I mean, that's the easiest way to say it.
And I don't think everybody, just because you're supposed to be on the trails, is at the trails. We can obviously see that in some of the
And myself personally, I've seen them amongst the crowd. Okay, they're driving slowly, maybe, but again, I've seen 2 or 3 on them. I wasn't there, I was just there to observe. So, but yes, occasionally there might be a few that get away on them and they go into the crowd.
Okay, so that helps paint a picture in my mind of what we're looking at here. The only other comment I have, Mr. Chair, on this would be, and I'm going to look to our county attorney on this, but I this kind of gives me I'm getting a little bit of a rub when we say this is people's home for the weekend. If this is a public event and these grounds then become public, is that fair to say that this could be looked at or treated as someone's home, that they have the same rights on an area where they're camping in what would be recognized as public, as a public area, as they would in their own home that they pay taxes on or apartment?
Well, it's a campsite, so it's different than a home, but I would imagine there still is an expectation of privacy, so it's a combination of both.
So, Ms. Chair, if I may, sorry. Sheriff Larson, do you have the ability to enter into my house without a search warrant?
Only with your consent.
Do you have the ability to then enter any of these campsites at any time?
The campsites, yes. The tents and/or campers themselves that are kind of blocked off, i.e. I'd have to open a door or unzip, the tent to get in, no.
Okay. Ms. Chair, I'll stop. Thank you.
I guess what I'm asking here, this will be my final comment, is that Mudfest organization meet with the sheriff to maybe they can come to an agreement before this board meeting. I'm assuming that as in 2 weeks, we're going to have to make a decision because this is going to be, they're going to have to get out there and advertise or do other. So the 2 weeks, I think, is a good idea. And I hope that you guys work with the sheriff's department and we move on. Anything else for a comment? Commissioner Jelinski.
Mr. Chair, I think we have to mention Mr. Gutwald's issue.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Chair, to that point, and Commissioner Wilson had mentioned this, and then one of the pictures that it was very definitive to me, unless it was just watered, that almost looked like the road was treated with calcium chloride. And you may have,
No, we're good.
Okay,
we're
sorry. But my question is, so if this is a recurring issue on this road, on this township road, and this organization and this event means so much to the township and to the community out there, and the proposers of this event want to be good neighbors out there, why in the hell aren't we just taking and calcium chloride treating that gravel road? I mean, this is so simple that it's ridiculous to me.
To address Commissioner Jelinski, I'm hoping the Sheriff's Department will also address the pictures that we had. I'm assuming you will get information on that.
Mr. Chair, the sheriff is not in charge of setting conditions for this. You, as a board, are. And so my suggestion would be, if you want to control the dust on the road, you set a condition that controls the dust on the road. We previously had, it was removed by a board at one point in time.
I'm giving the organization an opportunity.
I'm talking the mud trucks that are out on the roads.
But the dust on the road, there used to be a condition that was in place that required the organizers of the event to put calcium chloride on a certain portion of that road. That was removed at one point in time by a board, but you have the ability to condition that.
And we can
again,
address
if you would
that
like
in a
to
couple weeks if it
address
comes up.
Please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think chloride was in front of Gary's house, but not like a professional job done.
Yep.
And there was some by Clyde's house too. The problem is when you don't chloride 3/4 of that road going all the way to the highway, when the dust starts down here, it blows in this way. And also that's been done, before, prior to the event. And I do feel that it needs to be done a week ahead of time so that these people don't have to put up with that dust. I mean, besides all the other issues, the dust seems to be one. And on the other side of the story, whenever I've called Ralph, I went out there, It was watered when I got out there. So, water doesn't last very long. If it's not chlorided properly where it's in the dirt, then it doesn't last very long. So they have chloride. I think those pictures that Gary gave us showed right in front of your house. I think, Gary, there's chloride, but right before your house, there's not, and right after, and the dust comes from those trucks and blows into this place. But the quantity, then I've heard some people don't want the chloride on the road all year. So I've heard that story. So I don't know. I just know that dust seems to be an issue that needs to be taken care of. We have water trucks out there. It should be able to be taken care of somehow.
And I'm hoping, Mr. Wilson, that you could probably address that with the Mudfest organization as far as maybe meeting with them and say, okay, this is what you would consider and all that thing, moving forward in the next 2 weeks. Commissioner Jelinski,
Mr.
final.
Chair, thank you. I'm not finished with Mr. Gutwald. I'm not here to call anybody, I'm not here to hear anybody say this isn't true or that's not true. Mr. Gutwald has extreme concern. He's telling me that on Wednesday, or told everyone that on Wednesday there's mud trucks that are running up and down, whether they're on the road, whether they're not, I don't care where they are. My understanding is that those mud trucks aren't to be running on Wednesday. It's not rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. They cannot be run on Wednesday. Thursday, the event starts for mud vehicles on Friday, I think. If that is what is stated in this permit, and if I've got somebody that lives right there telling me and telling this board it is happening, I should look at Mr. Gutwald and say that's not true because the event holders are saying that that doesn't happen. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a kindergarten school class. It either is happening or it's not happening. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
I think, Mr. Jelinski, that they're like the sheriff said, they're not allowed on the roads, period. So, why are they there? And I'm hoping the sheriff can address that with them. And I'm hoping you can do that because I'm going to be on the Mudfest. They probably have no control over somebody going prior to Mudfest starting, but they're breaking the law. I agree with you. They should not be there.
Mr. Chair, in all respect, I could make a legitimate vote on a motion today. I cannot make a vote on next Tuesday, or 2 weeks from now. I physically will not be here.
And
Just saying,
If I can
I
say
won't
something,
be
Mr. Chair. My mind's not going to change. I've actually looked at this, and my proposal is going to be no ATVs and no minors. But then I felt, you know what, I'm going to try and be reasonable, so I put out 2 options. And I can tell you that I'm going to come back with the same proposal in 2 weeks. So at the end of the day, my mind's made up as well. And that's, there's
Well,
no
gentlemen, I'm going to put that in. Do we want to put it to a vote, or do we want to give them 2 weeks?
I'd like to give them the 2 weeks only because this is kind of dramatic about what they've presented, what we had last year, just to figure things out a little bit. I don't know. This is,
And we do have one of the commissioners will not be here to vote, and I'm not going to ask him to say yes or no today, so we can't do that. So
If they want 2 weeks, they have the opportunity to work with the sheriff to come up with a plan that they both can agree on. I'd be okay with that.
All right. I
Deb,
think we
have something?
Well, Mr. Chair, I guess I'd like to, and maybe the sheriff doesn't need that, but to clarify expectations of what you want from him, I guess, is kind of what would you hope a meeting produces, or what, he's presented here to you to the board, the decision makers, about what it is he can approve or what it is he can consider. I don't know what and maybe Sean, you're okay with it, but I just worry that expectation's not clarified enough in terms of what you expect of him and his staff when he's presented to you what he's wanting to or able to.
I guess my opinion would be let him reach out to the sheriff, and the sheriff has his opinion. He knows he's ingrained there. I have no problem with that. But again, they're asking for 2 weeks. Let's see what comes up, if you'd be okay with that. I know where you're standing, Sheriff. If it's going to be, if it comes back the same way, then we still have to make that decision, but let's give them the opportunity, in my opinion.
Mr. Chair, I think we need to give them 2 weeks because we have two options here. I wouldn't even know which option. I mean, I guess I hope that they can come up with the option that they would like us to go through. I don't want to sit here and say, I want you to do this one, when maybe they'd rather have the other one.
Anything else, Sheriff?
I guess just before I leave, we presented the information regarding the minors. We presented the information regarding the ATVs. And I just want to make sure that there's no questions for me on this, and hopefully I was clear as to why I'm coming up with my two options. And I have some reason behind that, but I want to make sure everyone's aware what that reasoning is. And if there's any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Do you have any questions for the Sheriff?
I have one, Mr. Chair. I assume, Sheriff, that you want, at the very, very least, from your security specialists, should it be okay to have ATVs on site. I was in your office a week or so ago, and you showed me a list that security specialists provided you. I want to say 2017, but I might have the date wrong, of date, time, incident, what took place, et cetera, how it was broke down. I believe they had a dispatcher on duty that documented all this stuff. I'm not exactly familiar. I would assume that that is something that you want to have also.
That's
Should
correct.
there be ATVs allowed at this event?
That's correct, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I don't need the expectations of the sheriff because I think he kind of laid out where he's at with this. I want to make sure that the expectations of this board are clear to those seeking the permit. And from my perspective, the issue with how they manage entrance into their event, whether it's through tickets or some other means, that when they come back to us in 2 weeks, that they will be able to present something to us that gives us clarity and gives us confidence that they can effectively manage numbers for an event like this. And that is something that also that they have had that discussion with the sheriff's office, because they're the ones who are looking. It's not you and I or anyone else on this board that's going to come out there and want to count on the numbers. It'll be the sheriff and law enforcement out there who will monitor attendance totals there. So when you come back in 2 weeks, we got to have something that both parties, meaning you and the sheriff, agree that this can give us instantaneous numbers. I think that's one of the expectations, and then for me, number two will be how do we get a better handle on public safety at this event? What are we going to do to change things so we don't have the same kind of numbers that we're looking at here, that we can have a better, more family-friendly, safe event out there? You know, I think we all want to see you be able to succeed in running your event out there. There has to be some lines out there that we got to stay inside of, and so if there's other things that we need clarity on or whatever, we can certainly get them. But I'm in favor of giving them the opportunity, especially with them being the ones asking for the continuance, to be able to try and work out something that works for all those involved.
And my last comment here, this is where I'm going to bring Chelsea into this one. If you don't want to meet with the sheriffs, because obviously he knows where he stands, I'll let you know right now, I will not vote for it unless it's approved by the sheriff's plan. So you have two of them there, but if you bring it forward, please go talk to Chelsea with the completed application. This is which way we're going, Plan A or Plan B, and we're good to go, I'm assuming.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to clarify a little bit on when we talk about a safe event. You know, I don't believe that the event isn't safe. You know, there's there's minors that are drinking. I know the four-wheelers are shut off at 8 o'clock, I think it is. You know, it goes back to the statement you said, well, when do we start? Well, we start at 12:01. Well, you really don't, because you have a shut-off date, you have a shut-off time, so you got to have a start time. You know, and it's not at 12:01 at midnight, because that's after 8 o'clock. You know, so we need to have some straight answers on what's a starting time, what's not a starting time. There's not supposed to be things in pits. We've talked about that until, I think, Friday morning or something. You know, do trucks get off their trailers? Possibly, I don't know. But they should not be on the road. If they're on the road, we should have gave out a ticket. So we must not have seen them, the tough truck, you know, the modified truck on the road. Otherwise, we'd have given a ticket for that.
Our complaints are right in front of you, Mr. Commissioner, and I think the first date of our incidents was May 25th, which means we didn't get a call on that incident specifically, if that was the case.
But I just want to clarify, a safe event, we kind of make it like it's not safe. I don't believe the event, I believe the event is safe. What people do when they're drinking and this and that is a whole other issue. But I've been out there. I think that there's a lot of things that are safe about that event. It's not totally that things are not safe. It's the number of people and what happens when people get together. So I just want to clarify that.
Mr. Chair, I can't stand it. I got to do it one more time. So what happens on Wednesday or Thursday of this event in respect, one more time, to Mr. Gutwald? He calls the sheriff's office and said, guys, I got to tell you, I'm standing in my yard. Hello. They're running. They're out there. Does the event get canceled? Do you shut the event down? I'm just asking a question.
For the gentleman right next to you.
I'm asking a question. Do you put it, it's documented in the whole application. This is when it starts and stops. So what happens? It starts. It started on Wednesday. Mr. Gutwald, I'm not going to look at Mr. Gutwald and say that he's not telling the truth. What about 8 sticks of dynamite at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever time they're set off? That's okay. We just allow that crap to happen, and it's all right. So why don't we start this event on Sunday night and run it Sunday to Sunday? What's the difference? It obviously doesn't make any difference. I'm a little concerned when Mr. Gutwald took the time of his day to come here to a public hearing and address this board with the incidents that he addressed. Everybody wants to believe he's making that stuff up. Maybe you are, sir. I don't know. I don't think you are, but maybe you are. And now I'm done. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the sheriff? Other than Brian?
Yes, I was going to suggest we would need a motion to table the
I'll
matter.
ask for motion and continue.
I'll make a motion to continue it for the 2 weeks.
I'll second
A
that.
motion and a second. Any more discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. We'll take 10. Thank you.
I have
We're going to switch the social service report to the public report, so public health, excuse me, public health.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer needs to get back to a WIC clinic, so I'd like to put her prior to social services.
Perfect.
So she is going to do a women's, infant, children's program update. Some big things, some big changes are coming forward, so I thought it'd be good for the board to be aware of that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jennifer.
Being passed around is our EWIC is coming flyer, as well as the new EWIC card that came in last week. So this is brand new to our agency. We're starting April 22nd with EWIC, which means we won't have paper vouchers anymore that list out milk and cheese and juice and cereal and fruits and vegetables. It'll all be on this debit style Meg Stripe type slide card. And how that will work is a participant will get a card. We will download through the air their food packet, and then they will go to the store and pick up, let's say they want a gallon of milk and a box of cereal that day. They can pick up just that, whatever they want out of that monthly food packet. And then they will just slide that card after those 2 items bleep through, and it'll be removed from the card. Well, how do they know what's on their card? Is it automatically pops up on their smartphone when they download the My Minnesota WIC app. And so they download the app on their phone, their food packet is listed, it says the expiration date, so it'll give out a couple pushes, such as your food packet will expire in 5 days. So it'll be very user-friendly. It's also synced to our appointment scheduler, and so it'll give them messages that you have a WIC appointment in 2 days, or we miss you, you missed your appointment, give us a call to reschedule. And so it should help with our no-show rate. It should help with just doing that outreach so that we don't manually have to do that and make those phone calls, because it will pop up automatically through their app in little messages. It's also our food finder, and so if somebody's wondering if what bag of tortillas qualifies as a WIC food, they can scan their phone across that little UPC number, and then it will say WIC approved food or not WIC approved food. And so there's all kinds of ways that this new technology is going to enhance the WIC experience, especially since that card is very discreet. You can pull that card out of your wallet, put your finger across the little WIC emblem in the corner, slide that card, and nobody has to know that you are on the WIC program. And believe me, that's the #1 complaint of WIC usage, is that people are rude. Oh my gosh, you're using WIC, it's going to take forever, and yada yada. People make comments that are extremely rude, and people are like, okay, that's it, I don't want anything to do with this anymore, and they leave our program. And so we definitely have had that happen. This will greatly enhance the WIC shopping experience. And it's also much more convenient because they can make a choice on that card. It's not grouped together on a paper voucher. So if they just need 1 gallon of milk at that time and they want to get 1 item, they can instead of getting 5. And so real good change that the state has made. And our whole state is rolling out, and we'll probably be done by June rolling out. We are one of the last states in the nation to go to EWIC. All states had to be done by year 2020, and so we are basically one of the last rollouts, but that's okay. We've learned from everybody else's mistakes and experiences and problems, and it's been really smooth. So,
Mr. Chair, Jennifer, how was this done before?
In paper form, so they had paper vouchers.
Okay.
And all the foods were listed out on the voucher, and they were for a 30-day period, and they had an expiration date on the voucher.
So this is good for much more than 30 days, or no? Or how?
It is an ongoing card, so they'll bring that card back in 3 months. They're going to get 3 months worth on that card, and so it's actually 3 separate food packets. Part of it will be in future benefits and current benefits.
So Jennifer, I missed it. If they buy a gallon of milk, they can use the WIC card, but if they buy some cookies, then they have to use something other form, so they'd have to, and I'm assuming, and maybe you did mention that they have a form before they go out, I can buy this under my WIC form, and so there's no embarrassment there.
If they don't have a smartphone and it's not on their phone, they have a piece of paper that we give them that lists out all their foods. And then at the end of the transaction, they'll get a little receipt at the bottom of their receipt that says, these are the foods left in your WIC food packet for the month. So again, if they don't have a phone for that next shopping trip, they can save that little stub, and that will show what foods they have.
And if it's good for 30 days, it's lost after the 30 days, and they got to reapply? Or
The
it's
foods
carried
just
over?
drop off of the card after 30 days. The foods expire, and they
Right.
drop off of the satellite food packet or whatever it is. It's all through the air.
So, and Mr. Chair, this nonsense that is often heard in the back room, if you will, of, oh, they buy this, they buy that, they buy this whenever they go to the store, is nonsense. It says on that card exactly what it is. It's fruits, it's vegetables, it's milk, it's meat, it's whatever it is. It's not smokes, it's not nonsense.
It's not Doritos.
Thank you, that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's very, very specific, and it's not Sunny Delight. It's 100% real orange juice.
Okay.
And everything is very specified.
I like it.
With the WIC program, all of the foods are scientifically evaluated to meet certain nutrient needs so that it grows a healthy baby within that pregnant mom or child. And so it's just every 10 years the food packet is reviewed to provide certain nutrients that have to be really precise. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
presentation.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
When Mr. Jelinski talked about the WIC card, and he talked about Doritos and other things, are there other cards that people get that they could buy Doritos with? Because just so we're clarified, the WIC is one program.
Yeah.
And there are other programs that people can buy other stuff with. Am I correct?
That is correct, if they qualify, because not all of the qualifications are similar across WIC or financial assistance programs
Okay.
or general assistance, so.
It's
Thank
called
you.
SNAP. SNAP is the other program, and people say EBT, I'm on EBT, and that's what they call it.
I just
but-
wanted to clarify that there's other programs that he could be referring to that's not
Yeah.
necessarily WIC.
And that's a cash program. So these are specific foods.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're really excited. As you can see in the PowerPoint, we were developed in the 1970s. It really was all about trying to help that pregnant woman have a healthy baby, and that's why we came about in the first place. We're very bipartisanly supported through the federal government or through USDA. Our funds come from USDA to the state and then down to the county. We serve about 50% of all newborn babies in the United States these days, and so it is a large portion of those infants that we serve. Here in our three-county area, 1,525 participants. And the next slide is on us, which is around 625 residents are receiving support through the WIC program. So, groceries. Well, we have a $9 million value in the Rick Nolan region. That's in 1 year. But there is a large financial impact on our counties when we look at grocery shopping, supporting those grocery stores, all those jobs. WIC is highly valued by the grocer. So,
And generally, we tend to see that these folks tend to shop more local than go to St. Cloud or Brainerd, or I think folks in these programs tend to stay local more so.
Yep. How does it affect it affects us with the retail food economy, jobs. The availability of fresh produce looks at the minimum stock rule. It is a WIC rule that says that grocery store B has to have so much selection on hand for a woman to spend her $11 fruit and vegetable voucher. And so they get an $11 cash value voucher, and they can pick out some broccoli and some frozen peas and some carrots, and it has to be around $11. And if it's $13, they have to pay a couple extra dollars out of their own pocket, but close to $11. And that means that the corner stores or the smaller stores need to have a minimum stock amount. And so that has actually helped with developing more produce out in the areas that might have a smaller store.
Mr. Chair, Jen, I'm sorry. Who does that checking, or who does that process with grocers to be able to qualify for being a WIC vendor? Is that the right way to say it?
You have to qualify and pass a lot of different points and inspections. It is through the state.
Okay,
it's called
it's not us.
the vendor unit of the state has all grocery store dealings.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about that. We don't do that here, though.
No. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Less low birth weight babies born early. That's the ticket. You know, that is why WIC was developed, and that is a major health outcome with WIC. Greater consumption of key nutrients, protein, iron, calcium, vitamin A and C. Decrease in preschool obesity rates. About 10 years ago, we put into action about 8 different nutrition topics, health topics, that we were to discuss with preschool children that were about age 2 and older, and that led to decreasing our preschool obesity rates. Things like less sugar beverages, more water, more family activity, more individual activity, healthier snacks, less sugar. And so there are actual specific things in our computer program that we select on and we discuss with parents. Less household food insecurity. Our children's food packet is worth about $62 a month, or $710 annual food packet. And so it does have a substantial grocery savings when you're looking at having 3 people in your family actually can be on the WIC program. Because sometimes we have a mom, babe, and a toddler, or we have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old and a breastfeeding mom. You know, it's just very different dynamics. But we can have several family members, and the women's packet is typically around $70 a month. So,
Mr. Chair, on eligibility, so how long could a child in a household be eligible for WIC?
till they turn 5.
Till the age of 5, okay?
Yeah, till they turn 5. And so we do look at it as a school and learning readiness program in the area of nutrition and health. So we're feeding into that brain healthy foods to help develop that brain and those brain cells for going into kindergarten then at age 5.
So, Mr. Chair, excuse me, Jennifer, is there another program that jumps in, if you will, after WIC is done at age 5? I'm the parent that is still, I don't know if the right word is to say struggling, but in need. Is there another program that kind of takes over at age 5?
If they're going to school at age 5, I mean, some kids don't go until age 6 or 5 and a half.
Okay.
There's not a specific program besides SNAP through social services, giving food dollars for groceries for buying. But school lunch program is through the exact same organization, USDA. So, USDA is funding the school lunch program and breakfast. So a lot of kids are getting both breakfast and lunch paid for right now.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and the free and reduced lunches, it's the same income qualifying factor for WIC as free and reduced lunches. And so that's, getting them a discount to get those foods too.
Thank you.
What does this mean to our community members? I wrote a general consensus of thankfulness. I mean, a month does not go by where I have someone in front of me saying, you don't know how much we appreciate WIC. You don't know how much this has made a difference in my family. Those moms who can't afford formula, but breastfeeding didn't work for them. It's extremely expensive. It's, a couple $100s a month for formula. And so providing that for these members of our community who even are working and are on that edge of, I just don't have enough dollars for these high grocery bills and paying rent and everything else. WIC helps, it really does. And we do have many, many people who are very thankful. And so that's a great part of my job. I have very long-term relationships with a lot of the parents, as they might have had a 1-year-old and they have a 12-year-old, and I've known them for years. But a lot of these parents are working and trying to make ends meet. I don't consider it a governmental handout because it is so health orientated. We're talking nutrition, we're talking health, we're talking weight gain, quitting smoking, stop using drugs while you're pregnant. I mean, there's just so many aspects. Also, on the next slide, it talks about some of the factors that how we're making a difference. The very bottom one, how it impacts public health as the carrot. We have our public health nurses, our MCH nurses. We really like to keep them busy, and so we refer our pregnant women from WIC to MCH. It's the carrot to come in the public health door. Rarely do we have a mom that just walks in and says, I want MCH nursing visits. And so WIC is just a really easy way to let women know of the other services that we have. And those MCH nurses are so educational based. They just really work with those moms to improve their health too. So it's a great partnership. You can see the WIC Healthy Foods as our nutrient building block. It's quite a variety of foods, from high protein to high iron to high vitamin A and C, and even magnesium in peanut butter to help those women get that magnesium, which is essential for pregnancy. Some of these key nutrients that we don't even know that we're low in, WIC is already addressing. So, in conclusion, I just have questions. Do you have any questions, first of all? I think like you asked him kind of along the way.
Very good report. I like
Thank
it.
you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's just cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Cindy will be back. I have a couple of other items under the public health report that I'd like to address first. The first is a request out-of-state travel for a nurse-family partnership training for a nurse in public health. We were awarded a grant to expand our nurse-family partnership program. We'll be coming forward with more information. It is effective from May 1st of 2019 through 2023, I think. But we need to get the nurse to the partnership training in Denver, Colorado. So I'm asking for approval for out-of-state travel.
I got a motion, I need a second for more discussion. Any? I have a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So as I said, I will bring more information about the grant and the Nurse Family Partnership Program and how we're going to be managing both of those. So then I have 3 food, beverage, and seasonal renewal license applications for approval.
Gentlemen,
Make a motion to approve.
I got a motion, I need a second.
Second.
I got a second. Any more discussion? If not, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And then I have a renewal application for a consumption and display permit for Arlen Swanson as Ramey Store.
Gentlemen, I'd ask for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion. I got a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. That is the end of the public health report. I will now move back up to the social service report and ask Katie and Melanie to come forward.
Doing the min choices?
Nope, that's going to be after.
Oh.
I know, we're going to test.
You're kind
your
of
skill.
confusing this morning.
I know.
She's doing a lot of
But
IT
again,
work this morning. and now
Tabitha
she's
said you
back
got
and
10
forth.
minutes. That's what you requested, so let's see if that works.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. So first off, I would like to introduce Katie Knettel. As you might recall, the county board approved a new supervisor position within our organization. And Katie was promoted from within. She was a lead child protection worker, and now she will be supervising the child protection portion of our organization. And she's here to just sit and watch Melanie do this today. But I'd like to, she's been with us for how many years with Morrison? 16
Katie,
years.
welcome with the new position.
We're excited. Congrats.
So today, we're going to just talk a little bit about out-of-home placements. We know this is a significant cost driver for counties and has a burden on the taxpayers, so Melanie's put together a nice report for us.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you for having us. No one's as thrilled to have Katie on board than I am. Okay. So our social services cases, I usually like to take a look at our case count when I'm looking at out-of-home placement, just to put things into perspective. I do want to make a couple notations about the child protection, child welfare case numbers. I cannot separate those out very easily in the reporting to SSIS. That large spike also is representative of the juvenile justice cases that we're adding on now that are truancy intervention workers doing. We're claiming revenue on those, and so we are adding those cases to the mix. And also we've shifted some of the children's mental health cases into child welfare because we are claiming waiver dollars on those. So that accounts for some of that down in children's mental health and a large increase in child protection cases. Because actually our case number in child protections hasn't grown nearly as much as our placements. So just wanted to clarify that. And our adoption, of course, the new normal is that higher amount. It's looking like.
However, if you, Mr. Chair, excuse me, Melanie, if you look at 16 to 17, there was quite an increase there too.
Yes, from 16 to 17 is when we saw that spike again, like we had seen back in 2013 with the meth coming back in. So that was representative of that increase.
Okay.
The number of placements, as you can see, we've been on just an upward trajectory. You know, previous these days, I would say, you know, we used to always run in the 60s. And 70s was considered a high year for out-of-home placement for us, previous to what we're seeing now with the high amount of unsafe situations with drug and drug use, particularly methamphetamines.
And if I may interrupt, Melanie, these are people within Morrison County.
Yes. Yes. I guess the only thing I'd like to say in regards to this, we had an impact back in 2013, 14, and reducing some of our placements because we're using relative arrangements, and that's where we're giving families the opportunity to resolve the protection issue without us going into court and taking custody of the child. And we did see some success in that, and we still do attempt to do that. However, what we're seeing is that in order to not have the children be in a situation that's not permanent and where they don't know what's going to happen for an extended period of time, we have to put a cap on those relative arrangements. So that is to say that a family has a certain amount of time. We usually set like 30 days or 60 days. You have to get into treatment. You have to make progress on your plan. Otherwise, we're going to go into court because we can't just have these families and these kids linger out there. And so what we're noticing lately is a lot of our relative arrangements start out with good intentions and they are converting into placements. We recognize that out-of-home placement is traumatic for kids. So we try, still to use it as a last resort, but safety is paramount. And so we're noticing with some of the drug situations or with registered sex offenders, we just are not able to safety plan around another situation and have to result to placement. Many of our placements right now come out of assessment as soon as we get involved. So the next slide just gives us a point in time. So this is for December only. And where in December, on December 31st, where we're at with our different numbers of placements and where they're aligned for truancy, mental health, or waiver placements. Those are disability placements. Those are ones that are not. So truancy and mental health are not as a result of any child protection issues. And then the 18 to 21 youth, those are kids aging out of foster care, and those are kids that came out of our child protection system. And you can see we still have a small number of relative arrangements and then our state wards and protection. Those numbers are fairly consistent from last year, so I just didn't do a comparative grid.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Sure, Mr. Lemire.
When you place a child with a relative, is there assistance that we provide them with?
If we do an actual placement that's through a court order, then they are eligible for foster care. If we do a relative arrangement, we have supported that family in that if they need something in order to care for that child, might need a $100 food card or something like that, or some clothes, we will purchase that for them in order to support the child and the family.
Mr. Chair, along those lines, when we looked at the budget and the levy for last fall for 2019, and in meeting with commissioners from other counties in the region, out-of-home placement costs was one of the biggest drivers to increase levies. If you go back to one of the previous slides, there it showed 100. I think we're up to 108. So how do I equate that to dollars? Is there a figure that we can, roughly use that it costs the county? Or, pardon me, I didn't state that right. But there is a cost associated to every individual that's listed in out-of-home placement. What number do we use?
Correct, and the segue is a little early. When we get a little further down in the slides, Melanie will do a good layout of the cost of out-of-home placement.
So I'm sorry. I'll be more patient.
That's okay. But yes, we want to address that because that is a significant issue for counties.
Mm-hmm. The next slide just shows our age of our kids in placement, and one of the things that I've seen over the last 5 years is a large growth in ages of 0 to 5 kids in placement. That's because just a lot of the kids that are in unsafe situations with regard to child protection and drug use are young, as well as if a parent has had their rights terminated previously and they have another child, that child comes into care, or very oftentimes kids born with drug exposure, those kids go into care immediately. So there's just a number of factors that are driving that huge number of infant to preschool age kids. And that, of course, is results in some pressure to families or even foster parents, because those are kids that aren't in school, and so you're talking about childcare costs. So that's been a factor there as well as finding specialized services is a challenge too. The next slide just talks about the different monitoring from the state and federal government that we are held to for regard to out-of-home placement. The time in foster care before permanency decision, we are currently in a program improvement plan with the state on that issue. I have written that plan, and we will try to make progress on that plan, but that is really a systemic issue, as I've identified it, that's really tied to our court process. We are having a hard time getting through our court, and I have more slides later on that will kind of illustrate that. And they also measure our time to getting to a timely adoption. Reentry rate means that kids that are sent home, do they re-enter care within 12 months again? Stability of placement, that's kids not moving from placement to placement. They want us to increase our relative placement rate. Measuring our face-to-face contacts each month with every kid in placement, and that has revenue tied to it. And then just recently now, it's been an addition of sibling visits and relative search and larger expectations for relative communication. And it seems like every year there are additions to responsibilities for the agency and the social workers and the case aides with regard to placement. It just continues to grow. The next slide shows our monthly face-to-face visits with children. We very much value, we're measured for this, we get money for this, but also it is critical to care, really, of the child, to know that how kids are doing in foster care and how they're doing in placements, and it increases the likelihood that they will do well, will assess their needs and access services. So I just would note that in 2018, we saw a 20% increase in our demand, that is face-to-face visits that need to happen. And we only saw a 1% decrease in our performance. It really takes a team approach in order to cover seeing all these kids every month by our staff, and they do really well at managing that and assisting for each other, and then also the work of supervisors and case aides to monitor that and make sure we're staying on top of it.
Mr. Chair? Melanie, when you say that seeing these kids once a month, your staff, if you will, physically goes to, from the government center to XYZ address, sits down and whatever, visits with these kids. Well, outstanding.
Yeah, I would just note too that a lot of our kids are not in this county. A lot of our kids in on-home placement are relatives in other parts of the state or in residential facilities as far south as, I'm losing the name of. Austin, and then Northwoods and Bemidji and all over.
Would we physically go there too?
Yes.
Okay, we would, okay.
Yeah. That's the expectation.
Okay.
The next slide is about just our relative performance, and I think relative search is a lot of work, and there's a lot of contact expectations when a child protection worker has a case. You not only have the case of the child and the parents, and you have sometimes all these relatives too. But Katie did really nice research project for us a couple years ago. It really demonstrated when relatives are engaged, our ability to reunify increases by 50%. And our ability to get to permanency also dramatically increases. I cannot remember the percentage of that, though, off the top of my head. But we know it's a good thing. And so we're investing time and resources into this, and you can see that it is paying off. We're at 60% now, and our state performance rate is at 35.7. So I'm pretty proud of that and the work of our staff to accomplish that.
And the cost savings associated with it is huge, and the healthy relationships and all of that is.
Yeah. We still pay a foster care rate, but the cost saving comes in the decrease of number of placements. And like you said, the benefit to the child, a lot of children will experience less behaviors or trauma in a relative home. Not across the board for all of them, but many of them, because it just feels more like family and less like they're in foster care. Placement stability is something that we've done pretty well at over the course of time. And I really, we have 1.4 moves per child in care, and the standard is 4.12. And I really go back to, again, citing staff's time that they take to support their foster parents, and also adding in children's mental health workers or other support services, the relative social worker, and all those support services means that you can maintain a placement without having a disruption when kids are having a hard time. Morrison, let's see, our reentry rate, our Morrison County reentry rate is so volatile because we have very few kids that reunify, and so you can see how that bounces around. Our state performance is at 8.3. They used to focus on that a lot at the state. It used to drive me crazy because I don't know. It was really hard to manage, and now most of the focus is on the next slide, which makes sense to me, which is time to permanency, which is where we're in our program improvement plan on as well. I have this highlighted in different colors because green is a standard, blue means we met the standard, and red means we did not meet the standard. So in 2016, we were meeting all the standards, and now in 2018, we did not meet any of the standards. A lot of what we have been able to drill down through looking at our cases and talking at our Children's Justice Initiative and Katie's data research showed that, this is related to chemical dependency and the extensions that are given in court, because somebody will go through, and chemical dependency is tough. It really is. It's hard to come to terms with needing to get clean or sober and getting all those supports, and sometimes they do not make those connections until like month 5. And so then they're starting to do well, and so then the county attorney will feel that we can't file a petition for termination or permanency, and so they'll get an extension. And so we see this kind of seesaw of them doing well and not well and doing well and not well. And so we're really needing to bring forward to our system partners what happens to kids in that situation and the need for permanency without shaming or vilifying the chemically dependent parent. It just is. And so we're beginning that work in earnest, but that is going to take some time. In the next slide, I just have the responsibilities of the agency when we have an out-of-home placement. We're looking at trauma needs, identifying relatives, and assessing, all the needs of the parents and the children. The idea is that they're going to be cared for completely when they're in care. We're going to identify issues and help to provide those services so that they can be reunified or be more stable. The next slide is the length of time in foster care. This is the comparison I've been looking at regarding which cases are drug-related. And I say drug-related, that's chemical dependency, really, which most often for us is meth and heroin. And then how that impacts kids staying in care. And you can see that is where the issue is that, it's those types of cases that are drug-related that are that are staying in care longer, and we're having a hard time to resolve to permanency. The next slide, again, reflects that for our 92 kids that were in child protection placements, 72 of them were as a result of or were impacted, and the complications or the placement are not being able to resolve the placement were because they had a chemical dependency issue of the parent.
And I think this is a pretty consistent theme across the state, as we've talked to our counterparts and other supervisors and directors, and hopefully at some point we can kind of turn this tide a little bit, but we know it's certainly an issue.
Mm-hmm. So then 2018, I just took a look at what our permanency decisions were, and we only had 11 kids reunify, and 29 did have permanency, which would be a termination of parental rights or transfer custody to a relative. And then the other 65 remain in care, but I will note that, please note that those include the truancy and mental health kids in the 65. And then finally, our placement costs. And this includes concurrent permanency expenses. And what concurrent permanency expenses are and what that means to me is I finally kind of had Jim our financial supervisor pull those costs that we are responsible for paying for into the placement cost, because we won't be paying them otherwise. And so for us in this new situation with chemical dependency, we're paying for supervised visits that aren't covered by medical assistants or health provider. We're paying for drug tests that aren't covered, and for a host of other things, but those are the biggest two. And we would not have to do those if we weren't in placement. So when a child is in placement, we are responsible, per the court and state law, really, to provide for every service that is needed in order to reunify. And our court really has that expectation. There's not too many times that we would be able to say, well, the parent couldn't afford that and we didn't provide it, and so, that's a barrier. They expect us to pay for that, and us, I mean, as the county, the residents of Morrison County, through taxpayer dollars. And so,
Just maybe one other comment I make, Commissioner Blaine wanted to paint this picture about the cost of the taxpayer, and I think also the other challenge is that courts aren't willing to terminate if we don't do everything we can, which includes paying for things that have no other funding source except for levy dollars. So that's always the dilemma we're in, as well as we talk about these costs for out-of-home placement. And so,
yeah, because if we can't resolve the issue, then they're going to continue on in placement, or they'll come back in, and yeah, so those are really tough decisions. And I do worry if there's any adjustment to our health care coverage ever, or if there's ever any changes to that where services aren't covered that are covered now, that's going to fall back on us on that as well. As well as the exploding costs for residential treatment, which is for our mental health kids. So there's just a number of factors that play into that cost pool that's worrisome and has continued to increase. So I could do some work and figure out an average cost per placement. What would you say an average cost is? Is it like for a regular foster care placement, I'm going to say about $2,000 a month?
Are you talking just the placement
Just the
fee?
placement fee, or just the placement cost?
Like the foster care rate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, they're all over the place because it depends on the special needs of the child and
The type of
the
foster
type
home
of
we use.
foster home, and if there's administrative costs and all this kind of stuff. But just like a general foster care child, like an infant going into a regular home, I would say about $2,000 a month. That's just for the foster care, none of the other services.
It's a lot of information, and it's one of those things that keep commissioners and our staff up at night thinking about how much this costs, as well as the safety and protection issues that arise, so.
Yep, right. And I thank you for saying that, because, I mean, at the bottom line, it is not about cost, it is about safety and permanency. And we've just been commenting lately as a staff and as a group, what happens to kids' mental health needs when they get into a permanent home and they feel connected. After all these years that I've been around, it still amazes me to see how well they do and how they recover. It is quite amazing. So it's worrisome, but it's also a good thing that we're working towards for these kids.
Jim, any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Katie. I have two other things under the social service report. The first is a big thank you to our financial assistance unit. Again, they were commended by the Minnesota Department of Human Services and the commissioner for having perfect performance on all of the quarterly reports. So between them and the staff and supervisors, they did a nice job, and I just want to recognize the work that they did as a unit. So
Hear, hear.
if there's no questions on that, the next thing that I have is a replacement position. We unfortunately are losing an eligibility worker to another local provider. I'm glad to say we brought this person back to town, but now they're going to be working for another organization with a little better pay and a little better,
Not as good.
Regional.
not a regional co-op that we're so familiar with. But we are in need to fill this position given our caseload size. So it's an eligibility worker in the financial assistance unit that works with most of our
More
financial assistance
discussion, I'll
programs.
need a motion.
I'll
make a
move on
motion.
that. Excuse me.
No, second.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, I have one report under Public Health Social Services, and I'm glad to say that I'm doing 2 board meetings in one today because I won't be here next time, but it got a little longer than anticipated, so I'll ask Cindy and Sarah to come up, and they are going to cut this a little short and maybe not go over all of the slides, given where we are at with time. So, but MidChoices is one of those larger programs we manage, ensuring that people get services, either to avoid nursing home stays or, as Melanie talked about earlier, maybe playing for placements that are more cost effective. So I will turn it over to Cindy and Sarah.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning. Good morning.
MidChoices is that person-centered assessment that's done on anybody that's seeking services. So they might want elderly waiver, CADI, CAC, TBI, there's a whole host. So it's a one-stop shop to get that assessment done. If you go to the slide that talks about Sarah will take over and talk about the social services numbers.
Yep, so this graph just shows, if you go up just a little bit, Deb. Thank you. So this graph shows the numbers in MidChoices for 2018 for social services. So social services has a 3.2 FTE. So we have 3 full-time assessors, and we have an assessor that does it 0.2 of the time. And so we have, that would mean for a full assessor, they do about 10 assessments a month, is what we say is their FTE. So we have about capacity for about 32 assessments per month in social services. So that graph shows how many assessments, blue, how many were new assessments, how many assessments in orange were reassessments, in gray are total amount of assessments, and then in yellow is how many people said, was referred for an assessment, but then refused to go forward with the assessment. So we did have a maternity leave this fall, so we were short an assessor. So Public Health did help us with coverage. We have a great relationship with Public Health, helps that I'm over there a little bit, but Cindy and I work really well together to provide coverage and work on these things. So they did do 3 assessments for us in November and 11 for us in December. So very grateful to Cindy and her team for helping us cover a full maternity leave and not having to look for outside coverage. So that was great. We did start a new process in March in which we implemented with our assessors, which means we're just asking them to keep their cases a little bit longer to determine which program they are eligible for. And so that streamlines the process for clients. Clients aren't being bounced around from case manager to case manager. They come out of assessment. We are entirely sure what their program they're eligible for, what they are seeking. They get signed to a case manager, and it streamlines that process for the client and their families. Also, in January of 19, all people requesting PCA services, which is personal care assistance, will need a full MidChoices assessment versus health plans contracting that assessment to outside agencies. So that will mean about 15 to 20 extra assessments probably in 2019 that we'll be needing to do.
So if you go to the next slide, it talks about the MidChoices numbers for public health. The new assessments are typically done by one assessor. I think you went one slide too far. There you go. There you go. So the MidChoices assessor does the bulk of our assessments. She does about 9 to 10 a month, and then if we have more than that, then the other case managers divide that work up among them. And we average, those case managers also have about 85 clients that they're doing case management for. The one thing that we know is changing with this is, that the managed care organizations, which is about 400 clients that have not been receiving MidChoices assessments at this point, will also go into the MidChoices pool. They're predicting 1 of 20 that they might be pushed back is what we're hearing. So that will change the workload for those case managers. Instead of doing a brief tool that they currently use, they'll have to go into the MidChoices system, which is changing right now. So Sarah's maybe going to speak a little bit about that.
So I just wanted to say to be a certified assessor, it is a lengthy process. So to train someone else to come in and do assessment work is not an easy thing to do. So we're lucky that we have the staff that are trained or have a high level of expertise, because it is about 30 hours of initial training to train a min-choices assessor. And they do have to recertify every 3 years, which means they must have 45 continuing learning units. 12 of them have to be person-centered. So they do have an extensive amount of training to be initially certified and to continue their certification. And then starting in our audit in 2021, we will be audited on person-centered language in our support plans, in our assessments. So it's important that we really get as much of that training as we can so we do well on that audit coming up in 2021. And then the other new thing rolling out is we're going to be coming up with a new min-choices platform. The state is rolling out a new min-choices platform. They're saying maybe July of 2019. That might get pushed out. We don't know. But it's a whole new platform. It's going to be new training. It means that right now, everything's, if you do a reassessment from year to year, all that data will pull over. With this new platform, that means it will not pull over and we're starting fresh. So everything will look new when that new platform launches. So the next slide just talks about our revenue for min-choices for social services. Blue is our budgeted revenue, orange is our actual revenue. So in 2018, as you can tell, we exceeded our budgeted revenue despite an 18% reduction in reimbursement by the state. So we're doing pretty well in this program. And then Cindy can talk about public health and finish up.
Our revenue there, we did not meet our expectations, and that was probably related to that reduction from the state. The other thing that happens is the amount of time that is spent doing these assessments, so it's really hard to predict that, and we have a waxing and waning of those referrals. We do have a dedicated certified assessor, whereas previously all of the min-choices assessments were done by the whole team. We narrowed that down to mostly being done by one person because when they're getting paid on the random moment system, we have a greater likelihood that they're going to get random moments when they're doing min-choices work instead of doing several things at one time. So we're hoping that that will improve our revenue by using that model.
Anything else from at all? Otherwise, Cindy, Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. As always.
All right, the last thing that I have is a conversation we've had a number of times at both county board and our planning meetings around South Country Health Alliance and the capital call and the impact it's had on some decisions about whether or not we would want to remain a part of that joint powers. So I have in your board packet a resolution that failed where we're asked to support a capital call. And we all realize that we are responsible for that capital call, and it's about $2.09 million.
If I may interrupt, why are we responsible? I know the answer, but if you put it on record one more time.
Because as a member of a county-based purchasing entity, which is a joint powers board, we sign on to take all the risks as a 11-county consortium, and that is our portion of the overall almost $14 million required to reach a certain amount of risk-based capital. And from an accounting standpoint, we're going to need this resolution to pay that capital call. And so what we've talked about over the last couple months is that South Country Health Alliance has had some factors that have why we have to pay the capital call, and that is they've had lower than expected membership. They've had higher than expected claims. They've had some rates from the Department of Human Services that have not really met the needs of their particular population they're serving. And so as a result, in 2017 and 2018, they had some significant losses. And so they need to have a risk-based capital of 233%, and this will allow them to get to that risk-based capital. 200%, sorry.
Okay.
So, and one statement that I made at our planning meeting last week or the week before is that when I said they had $3.7 to $4.7 million in claims per month, that's actually per week. So they have about 12 to $15 million in claims per month. So I misspoke a little bit. So, but we have about 5,900 members that are part of South Country Health Alliance. So I guess, well, the first part is that resolution regarding the capital call that we need to approve because it is something that we are expected to pay. And then I have a second resolution because we've had also a conversation about withdrawing from South Country Health Alliance. And so that requires us to do that today because we need to notify South Country by March 28th that we are going to withdraw. If we so choose, which then only puts us on the hook till December 31st of 2019 for all the claims for this calendar year. Although we will not, well, I will leave it there at this point, so, for those two resolutions.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution, Mr. Chair.
I need a second.
What is the resolution, excuse me, what's that motion for?
To approve the cash call.
I'll second it.
It says Morrison County Resolution approving payments of additional capital to South Country Health Alliance.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I have a question. I need to go back to Brad. Did you say there's 5,900 people in Morrison County that are members of this? I missed.
Correct, yes. 1,500 members of South Country Health Alliance.
I thought we had like 7,400.
That is the total medical assistance in Minnesota Care population. They are not all members of South Country. So
Very good.
we have 4 different plans for the long-term care population as well as a few for MA and Minnesota Care.
Thank you.
If I may, before we have a roll call on this, is this something that we have to pay right away? Or is this something that we can pay in 30 days, 30 years?
They are asking for the capital call by May 31st of this year, and so I've been working with Chelsea and Deb on the payments. I know there was some conversation about needing a particular amount of money prior to March 21st or 22nd. Unfortunately, we were not able to fall within that time frame. However, this will get them within the 200% of RBC by the time they close their books, which makes them eligible to procure for 2020.
Asking, does that mean that we can wait till the end of the year?
No.
Mr. Chair, it's a requirement from the state of Minnesota to pay by July 1st, so by May 31st. So unless otherwise directed, my recommendation would be that we send that over, and there's instructions on a magic account transfer, send that over prior, just within the days prior to May 31st.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner.
This is probably for Deb. The counties have a guaranteed agreement to pay, to have the RBC at 20%.
Yes.
The purpose of this resolution is because we're spending money for it.
Yes, the point.
Regardless, that the agreement says we have to pay. It isn't like we have an option to not pay.
Yes, and so it's just kind of aligning the direction from you as a board to what the requirement is for that joint powers board. Like we had talked about last time, or when this resolution was there, that there was question and discussion at that time that if there was a bit of confusion in terms of what was presented by the joint powers leadership, so by South Country leadership, regarding whether or not if a certain number of members didn't approve the capital call, it was understood maybe at first that that would prompt some action by the Joint Powers Board. But what we've come to understand since then is that it doesn't. They would then invoke a guarantee that would require us to pay anyway. So just, I'd like it clean on our books to say you as a board acknowledge and approve that payment that we're required to anyway. It was a bit misunderstood in terms of what was presented to us initially from the Joint Powers leadership.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Commissioner Wilson.
just for clarification, we're paying that money to, it's not like it's a debt that we won't get some of that money back.
Well, we don't know, Mr. Chair. We're paying to a joint powers organization that we're a member of, and we're a member of that in its debt and in its equity. And so
Right.
that's unknown because you don't know ever. I mean, it's the close of the books at an end of a year will tell us what their equity versus liability ratio is and such. And yes, we are an owner to that, so we do claim both the equity and the liability.
But it's not like right now we're behind on bills. They need that money to get at 200% of equity, right?
They need that money to meet that state requirement to be at a 200% risk-based capital is what it's called in the insurance business.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit maybe about what the payouts might be when we talk more about the withdrawal resolution, so.
Yeah.
And if I may, again, this cash call, where's this money coming from? Are we taking a bond, or is Commissioner Lemire loaning it to us, or where are we from?
It will be a transfer of funds from Morrison County to South Country Health Alliance. And Chelsea and Deb and Steve and I have not yet talked about kind of which fund these would come out of. As I've talked about before, currently we in social services are about at a $4 million fund balance. But I think us four will need to talk about which, and I don't see Chelsea still here, but talk about which funds and how this would be paid.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you. Commissioner Zelinski.
that is the reason that we have people like Brad on staff and auditors on staff, that we are able to have a fund balance due to the fact that, you know what, once in a while it does rain. And we don't have to go out to get a loan, get a note, and pay interest again on it. That's the purpose. That's one of the gazillion purposes of a fund balance.
Any more discussion, gentlemen? This is going to be a roll call vote. Commissioner Zelinski.
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Commissioner Lemire.
Aye.
I myself is an aye.
So the
Motion
next
carried.
resolution, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Nope, that's fine. That is
The next resolution in your packet, as we've talked about the challenges with county-based purchasing and the capital call with South Country, I believe the board is getting the sense that maybe it's time to withdraw from South Country Health Alliance. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that is, as we talk about the health insurance industry, it is changing. We are in the midst of procurement for medical assistance recipients in Morrison County for the next 5 years. So it is at a point in time where this would make sense if that's where the board would like to go. I also think now with all the health plans that want to get into the marketplace and procure for these particular recipients, it's a more challenging time for county-based purchasing to compete with those plans. I also think and have not seen a different direction from the state of Minnesota as it comes to rates and how they're going to deal with county-based purchasing. We've talked about it for a number of years about how county-based purchasing is treated similar to all the other health plans in the state, when really there should be and should have been some difference in how the state works with county-based purchasing. It was a very good consortium to be a part of, given when when medical assistance needed to be procured and they moved to managed health care doing medical assistance. However, the landscape has changed over the last few years, and I'm not certain, and I'm not certain from Commissioner Blaine, who's on the Joint Powers Board, or Administrator Deb Gruber, that the landscape is going to change as such that we're not going to be at risk if we continue to be a member of South Country Health Alliance beyond 2019. And so if we do choose to withdraw, and I think this was made pretty clear last at our planning meeting, that there would be another health plan that would be able to, that would procure and be a part of Morrison County. The relationship would certainly be different with a new health plan compared to with our relationship with South Country Health Alliance, because we've had some say and some input in services. We have Apple Tree Dental that is here because of our relationship with South Country. We also have Care Coordinator, Care Connector in public health as a result of South Country. But again, I think the landscape has changed, and the ability for us to risk taxpayer dollars and be a member of a county-based purchasing entity does not seem like it is going to change. And so the consensus, I think, was to bring forward this resolution to withdraw from South Country Health Alliance as
Gentlemen,
of
for more
December 31st.
discussion for the resolution withdrawing from the South Country Health Alliance.
I'll make a motion, sure.
I got a motion. I need a second.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Mr. Chair, if I may, there's some underlying points to this. Number one, and I think I stated this a week ago, the number one point that has to be made that to the residents of Morrison County that are members of South Country Health Alliance, that their needs will be looked after through this county and through an alternative provider if this motion does prevail. So that I think that has to be stated to the public, that a decision by this board is not one that looks to have a negative impact on the residents. For us to withdraw from South Country also does have, there will be effects that will be had by providers in this county, and I recognize that, and I think we all have to recognize that things will be different, and there may be economics that have come to this county and to providers in this county from South Country that will no longer come here. I agree with Director Vold in the sense that there are dynamics within this industry that are structured in such a way right now that the day-to-day operations, I would say, or the year-to-year operations to be in the health services provider industry like South Country is one that is based largely on assumptions rather than on concrete known entities. It makes the ability to perform in that field extremely difficult. I really don't know how an entity like South Country can do this year to year. When you look at to be in this business, South Country or anyone else, I should say, to be a provider in this business where so little is known to be concrete and so much is a variable. I don't know of another business model out there that can be consistently run with those dynamics. And I'd also, Mr. Chair, like to make the point that if this board chooses to pass this resolution to withdraw from South Country, that this is not a strike at South Country Health Alliance or county-based purchasing as far as their ability to manage, but I think that this is sends a message or should send a message to the state of Minnesota that something has to change in the reimbursement part of this program for counties and or even for nonprofit or profit entities to want to enter into this business and be successful. And until this, I believe in the county-based purchasing model. I just feel that at this point in time, the state needs to do its due diligence to make this actually feasible and make this profitable. There are some changes that are taking place within this procurement process where there won't be a low bid type aspect that I think that's one thing that's changed that is a very good thing. So you can't have an entity come in and basically lowball the bid process and then walk away from it. And that's something that's happened in the past. But all these things aside, I think this is it's a difficult decision, but it's a difficult position to be in, and we have the fiduciary responsibility of managing the taxpayers' dollars of this county, and at this point in time, the risk outweighs the benefit going forward. I'm hoping that somewhere in the future we would be able to revisit this program with better fiscal dynamics and would be able to return to a point where we can provide enhanced opportunities for those people that we serve within the medical assistance and Medicaid field. And so, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Any more discussion, gentlemen?
Mr. Chair, I need to ask Brad this. Should this motion pass, then the Department of Public Health would locate, I'm not putting words in your mouth, I'm just talking out loud, would locate 2 health providers, and they would become a choice for these 5,900, rough number, folks that are on South Country today? Is that
So we are in the
correct?
midst of procurement, so actually the Department of Human Services will work on securing 2 health plans that will take care of all 7,700 medical assistance members.
Okay.
So even though we're talking just about South Country now and that we may be withdrawing, ultimately the other health plan that is here may not be selected in 2020 either, but all 7,700 members would then have a choice of 2 other health plans, or one currently and a different one, so.
And they would have a choice of A or B?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
And myself personally, again, this is a tough decision for myself, but I'm looking at why are we doing this here? Because if we do not withdraw, then we would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, we would be accountable for the following year if there's more losses, where we could have a cash call at that time also. And as a business, I look at this as a business point, we just can't put our tax people in the county at risk again for a possible another cash call. I just don't see it. I see myself personally that the state is kind of against county-based purchasing, my opinion, so that they want
And I just like to maybe add, it is a very difficult decision. It's been a good relationship, and I wish I could say we aren't, that things are or would change, that we were clear things could change and that things would get better, but I'm not sure I see anything that that indicates that. So it's a very hard decision for the board, for our organization to have to be in this position.
Mr. Chair, and I assume our eligibility works are going to have a lot of work ahead of them. And how long a time frame do they have to process from South Country to whoever becomes our next provider?
Health plans will begin January 1st, so I'm not sure about our financial. We'll work with the Department of Human Services to see how to go about that process to make sure it's as seamless as possible. But ultimately, January 1st, they would have a new health plan assigned to them. And then probably even more challenging will be the providers, all the individuals who are seeing providers, whether it be mental health or medical or whatever, they'll have to work with those organizations to switch their health insurance company as well. So it'll be seamless, but there will be challenges, no doubt.
Mr. Chair, similar to our organization, if we would have a different insurance provider with enrollment that happens on an annual basis, it's a little less difficult if it's the same insurance company, but it's still, it's a manageable process that we have to help people through. But yeah, it happens relatively frequently in the marketplace of insurance in general.
All right,
And
well,
again, go ahead. And again, just go ahead and do it.
You're the boss.
No, I'm not the boss. Go ahead, Commissioner Lemire.
I just wanted to say that I'm going to be supporting this resolution. just because how like Brad said earlier, the way that the state treats county-based purchasing, the increased competition within the insurance market and the volatility of the insurance companies. And I just think, to me, it'd be responsible at taxpayer dollar to withdraw and allow the system to work out as it's provided. So, thanks, Mr. Chair.
And back to this apple tree, South Country is a big push to get apple tree in here. And this will not affect apple tree, I'm hoping, because I was, very supportive of getting apple tree here. And
Correct. I'm certain they have contracts with all providers who serve medical assistance recipients.
All right, gentlemen, any more discussion? Otherwise, I'll ask for approval. I got a motion, a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So just as a matter of detail, I will be sending a letter via email today to South Country, which will then be followed up with a written letter along with both of these resolutions. I'm CCing the board, Ms. Gruber, and our county attorney, as well as the board chair, Brad Anderson, in Goodhue County, as required by the joint powers agreement. So,
Brad, thank you.
Thank you, Brad, for everything.
Mr. Chair, how about a 5?
No problem.
All right, bud.
Okay, let's keep
All
moving.
right, thanks. See you, Pat. Bye.
Land Services.
Sorry about
Good morning, ladies.
Good, I think it's afternoon now.
Yes.
Yeah, 12:01. Good afternoon.
Planning that we had from our campus here.
So we have something fairly short, depending on how many questions you have, but every year we want to touch base with you this time of year after the property values have been set and that we've sent off our valuation information and tax statement information to the printer. So I'm going to let Jean go over kind of what we're seeing this year. So then as those come out, you'll have an idea of what's going on.
Good afternoon. Just wanted to, like Amy said, update you. We adjust on market and what the market is doing. All the sales come through our office, and we look at the median sale. The state requires us to be between 90 and 105% of that median sale. This year, in order to improve the assessment, I did look closely at quality of construction. The increase to the cost of housing has gone up, the material has gone up, and that's impacted the improved properties in Morrison County. We've seen a lot of sales that are on average, above average, houses that are being sold at much more than what we have on them, just due to the fact that it costs so much to build at this point.
So there's a much stronger market to buy something in place rather than build. So we're seeing that in the market for sure.
So I did look, we've got 6 different quality grades, and I looked at each one of those and I adjusted them so that we were at about 100% on each one of those qualities before I made any adjustments for location. So I looked at the quality of the house as well as what township or city is it in, and then made adjustments there. And because of this, there will be some increase and decreases in townships and cities that aren't going to be the same. So from year to year, generally, it's just changing the location, econ, up 5%, down 5%. But because we're looking at some of the changes in those, they haven't been looked at since, we've got the computerized system. And so it was just, making that a more equitable way of assessing those properties.
Mr. Chair, Jean, is it consistent with certain graded properties that had adjustments one way or the other, or does that
Actually,
not make sense?
all of them have gone up, some more than others, including double wides. Some of the double wide homes that we have, we've got those graded as well, and those have been selling pretty good. And we're talking about these on private on parcels, not the ones that are in the. In the parks. Those have not changed, but ones that are on land, and those have been selling very strongly as well. But it's from what I've seen with the qualities that we have 1 through 6, the highest end quality houses actually came down slightly. So the bigger houses, the 2-story on the river, huge, made of brick, I mean, those houses are seeing a little bit less. Again, the market is, so much stronger in those average to above average houses.
How about eggland?
Getting to there, but yeah, no, that's okay. No, that's okay. But ag land, we're sitting at about 95% on that. So I didn't make any adjustments as far as going up on cropland or down. But Morrill Township is going to see a 10% decrease just because of how their land sold this year. So they're the only ones that's changed in the ag market.
So that means, Mr. Chair, so that means in Morrill Township, the actual value of the property was less than it was the year before?
Correct. Yep.
And that's based on the sales that have come in that
Yep.
area.
Yep.
For that year?
Correct.
Okay.
And that, there's a lot of times we don't, the state requires us to have 6 sales to qualify to adjust. And sometimes now going back, if you don't have those 6, you go back 3 years, or I'll go back 5 years and see, is there kind of a pattern? Is there a market there to increase those or decrease those? And we were significantly high on all those properties. So just bringing those down to what everybody else is selling for in that area.
Can I throw a wrench in your?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I had someone come to me here and about PILT, to pay in lieu taxes. I don't know if this is right. That this organization is considered, or the farmer is considering selling it to where they're not going to be paying taxes anymore. So if, just to use this figure, if it's $3,000 a year they're paying taxes, how much would PILT pay?
I don't know.
Because that was my biggest question. What's the breakdown for, how much are we losing? Are we losing $1,000? Are we losing $2,000? As an example.
We don't.
Number one, they have to be able to qualify.
They don't, these people will qualify for it.
Right.
But they don't qualify.
No, but trust
Okay.
me, I know what I'm talking about.
Okay, well, I'm trying to clarify, it's not how it works.
The person that will be taken over will be PILT, it'll probably be a state.
Yeah, the assessor's office just values the property, determines the values. The calculation of the taxes is done in the auditor treasurer's side of things.
Can I chime in, Mr. Chair? We get a total PILT payment. I don't know that I've ever seen a breakdown on a per parcel on what we get, but we can ask Chelsea to see if we can't get a report at some point in time on that.
Because this is a substantial amount of land that's kind of worthless in one of those townships here, and they want to sell it to an organization, and the organization's going to turn around and sell it to the state. So that's.
Yep, that would be something you'd want to tap the AT's office to help guide you through that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, nothing. We'll talk about it later.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Wilson?
Question, just because evaluations go up or down doesn't mean their taxes are going to go up and down,
No.
right? That's the value of the homes. The
the
taxes are
yes.
based on how much money the county spends.
Correct.
Yep, yeah, I just wanted that for
Yes.
clarification since we're talking this week.
Commissioner Blaine?
Mr. Chair, so you go by townships, or in your statement, you go by township, and I've had a number of individuals in the last month asking me about changes in property taxes and changes in property valuations. So do we, how do I state it? So XYZ Township lays along the Mississippi River, and the properties that are recorded as sold in the past year, you said you need 6 properties. Let's say 4 of the 6 are homes on the river. Is that reflected in that location versus property that is, let's say, agricultural or far more rural, or you know where I'm going?
Yes.
How do we adjust for that?
We look at sales like sales. So we're going to have the water is going to have a front foot value that's going to be different than a small acre value. So we're going to apply, a higher value to that water, depending upon how that property is selling. But there's going to be, generally speaking, the front foot water is going to be higher than the small acre lot that's selling for, in a plat. As well as we're going to look at agricultural land, going to have a different value. So we're adjusting that according to how those are selling, as well as we also have a neighborhood code, which will indicate to us that it's on the water, off water. If it's in a certain, we have certain areas, plats that are a little bit higher valued. They're selling for a lot higher, or some that are selling for lower than what normal townships or cities are selling for. So we do have that broke down. The state will require that middle one to be the one that's going to be looked at as far as are we between that 90 and 105. But it's up to me to make those other adjustments, those smaller adjustments, so that we are seeing, on the water what we need to see as well as in the city limits or in the country.
So just because something's in Pike Creek Township, for example, the valuation of the property in Pike Creek Township that's not the only deciding thing as far as, it's within this township. Then we're looking at all those other factors. Is it on water? Does it have large acreage? Is it, and what's the quality type of that particular house? And we're comparing like properties within that township, and they're valued as a group, if that makes sense. So it's the driving factor is not that it's within that township. It's really the construction grade of the house and the other characteristics compared to others like properties in that township.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, so then it's possible, we'll use Pike Creek Township as an example, just pulling one out of the county here, but so because Pike Creek does lay along the Mississippi, so if you had, so it could be possible that residential homes on the river could change hands, and those homes could sell for 12% above market, which means that a home on the river in Pike Creek Township is in demand and has good value, and that could drive the value of those adjoining properties or properties in general in Pike Creek Township along the river. But it's also possible then, or correct me if I'm wrong, that the outlying rural property, even ag homestead land, could actually see a decrease in property value? Is that possible?
Mm-hmm. Depending on what that's selling for.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say if we have to have 6 sales, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm understanding, so we'd have to have 6 sales to set a base, correct? So if you had 6 sales in Pike Creek Township and they were all of those sales were either river residential or rural residential, and you did not have any ag land or farmland or farms sold, does the valuation on ag land change?
So we've got two different, we've got a residential, seasonal rec, and we have an agricultural. So those are separated before we even start.
Okay.
Now the house garage in 1 acre that's sitting on that agricultural land is going to be increased or decreased accordingly. So if I have, say I have 6 sales and 3 of them are on water.
It's going to be adjusted, it's going to be adjusted according to what?
It's going to be adjusted to meet the 90 to 105%.
So I think what Commissioner Blaine is asking is if all of if say you have 6 sales and they're all on water,
mm-hmm.
How is that influencing how you value the ag homestead piece, or does it?
on the ag homestead piece, that would be just the agricultural. So how is the agricultural improved? Parcels selling. So that's a different, you've got the residential seasonal portion and you've got the agricultural portion. So there would have to be 6 improved agricultural sales in that township to force me to make a move.
To make a change.
So if 6 houses on the river sold, it wouldn't have an influence because the market that she's looking at there is seasonal rec on water. It's not in the same realm as the ag property. That's not going to drive the value decision on the ag property because it's not a like comparison.
And vice versa, if you had 6 farms that changed hands or sold and
But nothing sold on the river.
And nothing sold on the river, it technically wouldn't make your river value property change hands. The other relations part of this, bless you, is the fact that that if you had does property that sells that is right on the river, and then property that let's say is across let's say Limburg Drive or West River Road that is not on the river, it does not have river frontage, but is just a residential area in let it probably be in agricultural land, but let's say it's a house on 5 acres there on the other side of the road. Would that be influenced by that sale? By let's say six residences that are on the water?
And it potentially could. It's going to be. So for the most part, I'm going to adjust the water frontage up or down depending upon what the market is selling for. So if they're all on the water, it could potentially mean that only the properties on the water are selling. But say I have 6 sales on the water and say 10 total, I'm still going to look at the other ones to see if the outside areas need to be adjusted as well. So there's a lot of factors that'll go into, looking at different breakdowns and as far as what to do with those. So you could potentially have just the water frontage go up and nothing else. I mean, if you see no market, if we don't have any sales that are off water, we may not change that at all because we don't have anything showing us that it needs to go up or it needs to go down. So we stay the same.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I may, my final question for clarity to the public, if a taxpayer has questions with his assessment on his property, that he can obviously, certainly, he or she could actually come and visit with you in the assessor's office to gain a better understanding on how that assessment level was reached. But there is no opportunity for that to be adjusted outside of that truth in taxation. Is that correct?
Yes, once the notices have been sent out, we cannot make any changes to property. But what we do is, once the notices go out, we receive phone calls. We receive a lot of phone calls requesting, why did my value go up or down? So we will take those phone calls and we will explain to them, or they can come in. Either way, they can come in and we'll explain to them what we do. The sales are all public information. Why I moved in the direction that I moved, I would be able to show you why I did this and what sales helped create that. So if you as a property owner come and say, I disagree with this, I go out, look at your property before the local boards, I would be able to address anything that's, you've got some problems, concerns, we had a basement finish, it wasn't on there. So I bring that back and I send you a letter stating that this is what I'm going to take to the local board. If the property owner agrees with that, I take it to the local board and I say, this is what we've seen. For the most part, the board, they don't have to, but they usually will go with what our recommendations are. So we do have a way of adjusting those kind of prior to the boards. What's nice about that is that then the board isn't waiting for somebody to run out, take a look at the property, come back, give their advice on what that is, and then make action then. Sometimes we still do that, though.
But that would be for 19 pay 20.
Correct.
So when people get their mailing now, they're going to get their tax statement for pay 19. So their property's already been valued.
Yeah.
And that they've missed that window to appeal or to deal with what their tax statement amount is and the value is. But also within that, they get their valuation notice for, okay, and then for the next tax year, this is what we're valuing at. That's when they're notified, here's what we're valuing at moving forward. These are the local board dates that you can attend your township or city board date. And then, so we're actually working with that property owner on their 19 value pay 20. And so that is what they have the capacity to discuss. But we're only going to be working with them on the valuation of their property, not how much tax they're paying. So if they have questions on what we're valuing their property at and how we arrived at that, we're the people to talk to. If they want to talk about how did you arrive at how much I'm paying, that's an auditor treasurer's question, and they can break down, well, because there's so many things that go into, they might have a referendum that passed. They might have other local levies that are tacked onto what the county has, and the breakdown of that is for their total tax bill should be addressed by the auditor treasurer's office.
Well, as the person who sits in one of the most loved offices within the county, we're glad that you're there. So.
Anything else, Commissioner Blaine?
I can't. I think I got everything covered. I used up all my words.
So the tax statements.
I have just a couple things yet, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to let you know that the newer barns that are going up now, those are going to go up $1 a square foot rate higher this year. It was something that was discussed amongst counties in the area, so that we're all doing it equitably, so that if you've got a barn in one area, that it's similar to a barn. So it ended up, we were very close throughout the counties that was that we were really close then. So by moving up $1 a square foot, we're very, very low on those barns compared to what they cost to build and what they cost to make. So we're adjusting that value as well. Mm-hmm. And what else was there? That just, our city and county boards are going to be starting on April 10th, and they'll be going through April 26th with the county board, then being held in June. The tax statements will be going out this week. They need to go out by Friday for sure, but as soon as as soon as they can get out, they will. So I would expect in the next couple of days those to be going out and the phone's starting to ring. So, and again, if you do have questions that you're struggling to answer with, you can contact our office. They can contact our office. We can go through all the details of their specific property.
And I'm sure Mr. Blaine could come into your office, and if he has any questions, he could.
Absolutely. And like I said, yes, and it is all public information, so, anything that is shared is, yeah. You're welcome to stop in anytime.
Thank you.
You've got an appointment.
Anything
Thank
else
you.
you have for us? All right.
Good
Thank
to
you.
go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Who do I say? Good afternoon to the extension report.
Think of all that you learned in the last hour and a half.
Nathan, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
And when you get back to St. Cloud,
Nathan,
that's
what
the
do you
end of the
got
day?
for us?
Yeah, sure. That's how that works, huh?
You got a few things for us, Nathan, huh?
Yeah, so just thanks for, continuing to invite us to come here and talk. So I'm just going to go briefly over kind of what our report was, at least focus primarily on mine. I know both Emily and Katie have been very busy over the past month, poultry workshops and cattle, working with beef cattle and that sort of thing, preparing really for the summer. Emily especially has been focused on the dairy programming and getting the ball rolling there. And Katie has been doing a lot of master gardener activities in the area. She did have last month one of her bigger events was canceled due to snow. Seems to be the common theme so far this year, is that about every single time that I had an event in the past 2 months, we either had negative 60-degree weather or we had 10 inches of snow. So couldn't seem to catch a break in some of those instances. But for me, probably, just kind of focusing in on mine for the crops position from probably about December into January, I've had a nice uptick in phone calls. A lot more people calling in. Of course, the big questions being on getting licensed for a private pesticide applicator, for your license there. And then also the dicamba trainings for, again, coming into that. If you're going to apply dicamba in soybeans, you have to take a special certification class not offered by Extension. It is industry, and only industry is doing that this year here in Minnesota. And so you have to attend one of their workshops to be able to do that and get that product. Moving into the ending of January into most of February, I was very busy. Started off in Paynesville with the PPAT there. And I'll focus on the private pesticide applicator training workshops here. So that is a program that is run by Extension. It is in contract with the MDA, and then MDA is allowed to contract with us through the EPA. And it's what allows us, so the private pesticide applicator licensing program is all run that way. And so we have these workshops, and that takes place of having to retake the exam every 3 years to be certified. And so in this area, because we have such a large area and we have a lot of private applicators in this area, we hold usually between 4 and 5 of these throughout the 3-county region. This year I had one in Little Falls. We had about 50, we had a little over 55 attend that one. It was very, very well attended for this area. So we had that going for us. I also had 3 in Stearns County, Cold Spring, Holdingford, and Paynesville, and then Foley. So that would be 1 in Benton County. And then we also had the Winter Forage meeting, which was in Royalton. That was the negative 60-degree day that we had back in January. So about noon, everyone in the facility disappeared and went out and turned on their vehicles. And we had 40 registered. I think we had 25 show up just simply because everyone was trying to keep cattle alive and keep pipes from freezing and that sort of thing. So a lot of things on that front. And then towards the middle of the month, we had a strategic farming program, or held that in Paynesville as well. But of course, all counties are invited to that. And the primary viewpoint of that is we're trying to get growers to understand, to focus less on applying products that maybe aren't going to see the return that they would get from doing other things. And so it's a lot of research-based information coming down from the University of Minnesota, the extension program, and so we bring in speakers, regional extension educators to kind of talk on that. And so that was fairly well too. Moving forward, I'm now in the program planning phase of the Scissor Cup program. So this is one that always goes over very well. It's also known as the Alfalfa Harvest Alert Program. The Morrison County area, we've had 2 fields in the past. I'm looking to continue that partnership up in this area. I think it's very good that we keep this going, especially with the beef cattle operations around. It's very useful on that front, as well as then we've got that hay list. We keep track of the hay auction information that comes from Sauk Center, and that goes out to everyone. That I have an email list specific for that. And for those who have been monitoring that, they'll notice that hay prices are currently reaching. We haven't been this high in about 5 to 6 years, so they're reaching records at this point. And with the current flooding situation, I don't see where that's going to change very soon. So that could be very, very interesting to watch that as that progresses here. Let's see. Other things, of interest here is I'm still working on combine cleaning workshop. One of the big primary questions that I get is after I tell growers, well, don't go out and harvest a field that you've got, infestation level of weeds in. Don't then take that combine and go harvest a clean field. You'll transport seeds and they go, well, how do you handle that? Well, you got, a lot of it is you have to clean your combine after you get done. And how do you do that without taking a whole day to accomplish that goal? Well, there are publications, there's ways of doing that where you can get about 90% of the seed out and not transport that. And so that's kind of what I'm working on there. And then there's a series of other organizational meetings in the past 3 months. Water, from water resources to, nitrogen management and that sort of thing. Nitrate in water is a big issue, and so attending those meetings and serving on some of those boards is kind of what I've been trying to get involved a little bit more with. Upcoming events here, and actually it's right there at the Nitrogen Smart Meeting. They wanted a Nitrogen Smart Meeting here in Morrison County, especially here in Little Falls. So we have one on Thursday of this week, so March 27th at the Cass Gilbert Depot. It's a great opportunity to learn more about nitrogen and how it's influences how we utilize it in agricultural systems, how to manage it better so that we have less of it getting into our lakes, streams, and rivers and whatever else. And then the afternoon session focuses primarily on manure management and that sort of thing. So it's a good program. Brad Carlson he's the specialist in this area, and he's the one that does a lot of the education for this. He is, how he puts it, he goes, we're not trying to tell you how to apply nitrogen so much as we're trying to give you the tools to make make better decisions yourself. So, very excellent opportunity there. And then the grain marketing plan, just general, with as tight as margins are at this moment, being able to have a marketing plan in place can really help out with those input issues, or we're done with, but with the low margin issues, you can make sure that kind of what you're going to get. And so we're holding that there in Freeport. Again, anyone is welcome to attend any of this. This is a tri-county arrangement. So, if it's going on in Morrison County, Stearns and Benton is more than welcome to come up and attend those. If it's being Benton or Stearns, it's the same situation. So, otherwise, I think that's all I've got for you.
Anything for Nathan, gentlemen?
Good work.
I appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hanging out so long.
That's all right. I understand.
Well, let's see here. We got Kathy.
Steve was coming up there. I'm like, oh, wait.
There'll be a fight.
Yeah, arm wrestling.
Dance preparation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Kathy. Or good afternoon, Kathy.
Yes, good afternoon. Well, mine should be a lot shorter and simpler, so kind of like myself, short and simple. But, so we've had a crazy winter and fall with a lot of different things happening in our office. I think a lot of things just even personally for our individuals, but we've held strong and we've had a lot of great help from all of our other departments. So I want to say a big thank you to Public Health for helping us out. I've had a lot of family issues, and obviously Jim did, and we've had a lot of things going on, so it's been a little stressful, but it's awesome that we have such a great team of people, and actually I've learned a lot about a lot of services through having sick parents of different things that social services and public health have. A lot of it's difficult and frustrating, but I've learned so many things, so yes. And so we'll go on to the slide here, just kind of looking at what we have. So when you look at, like, Kathy, what were you doing from September to November? Well, obviously I was gone, so my numbers are a little bit lower than Luann and Jim's as far as people that we saw in the last couple months. But they've done well, and it has gotten busier here just recently. We had a deployment that just got back, so I anticipate now with the nicer weather and also deployments returning, we'll probably have higher numbers. It's always hard to gauge. They all seem to come at once or there's no one. So you just never really know. That's any business or office, that I'm sure. And go on down to the next one. Just kind of what we do, mostly office visits. Luann probably always has the most office visits, I would say, because I'm doing more of the meetings, managerial stuff. And Jim is more the person who is doing the triaging. He's answering the phones, so he's got the phone correspondence and then deciding, do they talk to Luann or myself, or do they go to some other office? So we all kind of have our pieces of that puzzle. I primarily do a lot of the emailing portion just because I send out the email distros and handle a lot of that. So I probably have most of the emails. I would say Jim probably has the most phone calls and Luann the office visits, as far as our breakdown on how we interact in our office. And then the next one, top 3 things that we deal with in our office. So the biggest thing, of course, is we work with service-related injuries and illnesses. We are seeing more people, a lot of people that have went overseas to Southwest Asia. So Iraq, even myself, I have suffered some of the residuals of some of the illnesses that come from those areas, which are not exactly fun, but we're finding a lot more people with some of the same things, a lot of joint issues and pain and whatnot. So the tough winters are not always fun for people with those types of things, but you learn to deal with them. They're finding a lot of awesome programs to work with those things and make life a lot better for individuals, and also not necessarily that you're looking for service connection, but how do we treat these things so that people can live a better, happier, healthier life. So, and then we're working on, there are more things that they're finding with the Agent Orange individuals, and then there's some new Navy things that are coming out. But our biggest thing is contacting people when they get back from their active duty deployments right away within that first year, capturing things so that if they have issues in the future, they know to come to us and we can help them find the right resources and not let things grow and get worse and not deal with them right away. Then we do a lot of healthcare enrollment, and that's the primary piece, is that they have to get enrolled with VA healthcare in order to utilize their programs such as yoga, massage therapy, acupuncture, a lot of things that they're trying to get away from utilizing a lot of medications, doing more natural therapy type things, which I think is awesome all the way around in our society, is working with ways to deal with pain and things like that without taking medications that where the side effects are much greater than what they're helping you with. So I like that, and I think that's a great way that the VA is heading. And we deal with a lot of death and burial benefit type stuff, and this time of year as Memorial Day comes up, we have our bronze stars that we take out to our families come and they get those, take them to the cemeteries. We had 5 flags that we got today, so we had 5 veterans' deaths in one day. Pretty crazy. It's like it goes in streaks like everything, but that was, I'm like, wow, that is a lot in one day when you kind of think of our small little community. But that's what we've been working with. And some cool highlights that we have. So one of the things that happened kind of by doing a home visit with Mr. Gene Nelson was he wanted to be on TV and he wanted to share his World War II story. And so I said, I know someone who can probably help us out, who's sitting in the room, Mr. Mark over there. But we decided, hey, let's get you on the Little Falls TV station and share your World War II story. So he started doing that, and that's been a thing that a lot of people have talked about at veterans organizations. And so now, every so often, we just interview veterans from different eras. We had one just recently that was from the Gulf War, looking at a Korean War veteran and a Vietnam War veteran, and then a female from Iraq sometime within the next year, and just doing an interview and sitting down with them, capturing these stories and sharing them. And I think it's really a neat thing for them, for their families, but also it provides information on what it was. It brings history to real life. It's been just a cool thing. And it also just made Mr. Gene Nelson very happy. So he was a celebrity down in the Twin Cities area and all over nationally. He's become a celebrity because of his service in World War II. So pretty neat. I helped with a women's event in Duluth. That is something we've been trying to grow and prosper, women's events for veterans all over the state, because a lot of things that we have, the fishing, hunting events, things like that are awesome, but sometimes women might, I went to one, I was the only female there. I went to a pheasant hunting thing. I totally had fun, but it's kind of nice if you have more women together doing things. And so that event turned out very well, and it was nice for people to share their stories and
to work on ways to, I don't know, just deal with things in a better way and to get together. Region 5 food program, and that program, we have a food program that was developed. We have some individuals with Sourcewell in Region 5 that work together, and they're working with Sprout on giving 2 bags of food per month to veterans in need, is how it started, and also cooking. So we're taking natural foods that are grown in our community, showing people how to prepare them, and then they get food out of the deal. We're finding some counties within Region 5 are doing great. I've only had a few that really want to do it, so I'm not sure why. The people that really want to do it are over income limits for it, so I've asked, can we have people still participate in the program? And the answer was yes. So we will be able to have other people participate in the program. They will have to pay a fee. But, you know, that's all right. If they want to take these cooking classes and things, I think it's really neat. We have Sprout in our community. Why not do something with that? But I am hoping that we can reach out to more individuals that need help financially, need help preparing healthy meals and grow that. But we'll just have to keep working on pushing that out. There's also, in Region 5, they're trying to enhance the community transportation, and we have a piece of that as well as veterans, and then we also have widows and different individuals in our community, so still working with those programs. And then also we've gotten more into providing adaptive equipment, people donating things to us, and us getting people equipment that that's affordable. A lot of people can't afford things like hospital beds if they need them or things like this, but maybe someone got a brand new one from the VA and they're able to donate that. So we've been working a lot with different resources and helping people get things that they can utilize. So that is out there. If you ever hear of someone that needs something, we may have it for them, or a way of getting them something that's more affordable, because let's face it, things like that are so expensive, and who can afford to buy these things? And maybe someone had a brand new wheelchair, or whatever it may be. So it's kind of fun to be able to help people that way, or a lift chair. And then when you're looking at the pictures down below on that slide there, so we see that cold winter day, the DAV raised money for our Morrison County Employee Association by collecting. They came up and they picked up clothing, and those funds go to the Employee Association for Morrison County. So even through the blizzard, they were working, so that was kind of a cute picture. And then you can barely see it, but there I am dressed as Santa Claus petting a real live deer. We brought out a donation with the Legion to a family in need. They happened to raise deer, so I, being photogenic as I am, I had to get my picture taken with the deer because I was in the Santa Claus suit. But it was a very neat thing. We had a female veteran who was suffered military sexual trauma while she was in the military, had just a horrible, lot of mental health issues, a lot of financial issues, and we were able to go out there and provide many gifts for their children and make their Christmas a lot better. So that was a fun event. It's always neat to be parts of those things. Fun parts about my job. And then our last page. So just upcoming things. Well, actually, this is an upcoming. We just went to the conference for Walker, and then we have this fall. We'll have the fall conference. I help with a lot of planning and training for that, and making the training for all of our CVSOs in our state a lot better and stronger. And then our district training, we were supposed to do that in February, but because of a snowstorm, we are actually doing that in May. So that'll be coming up, and we've been doing those twice a year instead of once a year now. And then just working a lot with our returning veterans and getting them in as soon as they get back. So I may be participating. They had a reintegration at Fort Bliss, Texas. My mom was ill at the time, so I was not able to go. Some other CVSOs went, but as others return from our area, I may see about participating in those and talking with you guys if that is presented again, which it probably will in July or sometime this fall. And then just working with a lot of community and entities, working together to help people and their families. That's what I have, and that probably was longer than I realized. Sorry.
Kathy, I had a veteran come to me and say how good a job that you handled with benefits and all that too, so you've got to be doing something right there, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else. Sorry, it's been a little bit, so I feel like, I don't see you guys as often as I should, so.
All right, thanks, Kathy.
See you, Kathy.
All right, so are you the auditor?
I'm
I'm not really the administrator, but
Are you a fill-in for the auditor?
Yes. There are a couple of action items. The first RBA is to permit the Big Lake Sportsman's Club to hold a raffle at Stonehill Bar and Grill on November 30th, and to permit Scandia Valley First Response to hold bingo at Valley Hall, because you can
I
read.
got a motion, I need a second. Second. I got a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Another RBA is to approve an exempt permit for the Morrison County Pheasants Forever for September 13th.
Need a motion, gentlemen?
Motion.
Need a second?
Second?
Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The cash report is included, and then also the warrants would need to be approved in a roll call vote for.
All right. Motion to pay all the bills.
So moved, Mr.
I have a motion, I need a second.
Second?
Any more discussion? This will be a roll call. All right. Commissioner Lemire?
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson?
Aye.
Commissioner Blaine?
Yep.
Commissioner Zelinski?
Aye.
Myself is aye. Motion carried. That would take care of the auditors and warrants. And I see we got Steve here.
Oh, sorry.
Nice, Steve.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, everyone.
Good afternoon, Steve.
Good afternoon,
afternoon.
Steve.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have four action items for your consideration. The first is our seasonal quotes, in which we take prices from contractors for equipment rental rates, bituminous material, winter maintenance, sand, and calcium chloride maintenance. That abstract was included in your packet. Prices are moving. Some have moved down, some have moved up maybe as much as 10%. A lot of them stayed the same. We also had listed the Corey's Quarry for winter maintenance, but we also have Knife River's quote also included in there. Bituminous materials, we utilize that where we may have culvert failures through bituminous roadways, where our own staff may replace those culverts, and then we'll bring a contractor in to repave those back. I don't see anything out of line here. We'd ask that the board would accept all of these quotes and allow the department to utilize them in the best interest of the county.
Need a motion to accept the seasonal quotes?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mr. Chairman, item number 2 is our contract quote for calcium chloride application. We received 2 quotes. That abstract was included in your packet, came from Knife River Corporation and Envirotech. Knife River Corporation was low. We would recommend that the board accept their bid and award its contract to Knife River.
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
I got a motion second. Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we also accepted bids for this is spray patch bituminous cracks. That's where we have bad cupping. We use a lot of oil and granite chips to repair those, to put a ride back into them. We received 2 bids, one from Aztec and one from All Things Asphalt. All Things Asphalt was low, and we'd recommend that the board would award this contract to them.
Motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
Second.
Give it to Mike. Give it to Commissioner Lemire. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, then lastly would be the maintenance contract for striping for this year. We received 4 bids: AAA striping, Century Fence, Sir Lines-O-Lot, and traffic marking.
Jim will
Traffic.
ask for a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Any more discussion? Not those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
That's what I have for you, Mr.
Steve,
Chairman.
thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks very much.
You sure that Sir Lines enough is a real story, a real place?
Oh, yes, they've done work for us. They're not too bad.
I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
So my little overreaction was that I forgot to let Mike Philippe know we were going to be ready for him in a minute, so he's on his way.
And then how about if we go anything in the administrator's report?
Well, we're going to close the session for,
Other than that,
Okay, well, I don't know if you ever want me to talk.
I don't, really.
I know that. You could go over your schedules, though, because that would save some time.
There you see, that's what I'm doing. How about let's do committee reports. Let's start with Commissioner, who did I miss last time? Commissioner Blaine.
Where are we going from?
We're going, what's the dates?
March 31st
31st,
through April 13th.
April 13th. Commissioner Blaine, what do you got for us?
I'll start.
March 31st to April 15th.
13th.
April 13th.
So we have planning session April 2nd. We have TSWAC on the 5th.
Do you have a South Country that week?
I do not. I have South Country day after tomorrow.
Okay.
And since it's late in the month in March, then we don't have one Friday, or in April, but thank you for that. We also have Board of Adjustments on March 2nd.
April.
Yep.
Thank you. April. Following week, we have board on the 9th. There's a department head meeting on the 10th. I've got, at least I've got it on my schedule, Morrison, Todd, Wadena. Yes, we do. That's, but I think that date has changed. The Morrison, Todd, Wadena Community Health Board meeting, I think that is the 17th. I'm going to ask you to check that.
It is.
Yep, you're correct, that is right, the 17th.
And outside of that, I think that's all I got.
Commissioner Lemire, what do you got?
Yellow ribbon on the 8th.
What time and where?
Cabin fever, 5 o'clock. And then I got Sourcewell. What's?
Yeah, that's that.
Oh, that's.
It's like an award, student recognition.
That's it.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson.
Where, wait, do I need to put that down?
Sourcewell?
I'm not going.
Well, we can,
It's at. You can put it down if
it's
you
at
want.
5 o'clock, that's at where?
Madden's
Yeah, okay.
What day is that?
On the 10th
10th.
of April,
Couple of years.
maybe. Commissioner Wilson.
On the 4th, I've got Central Minnesota Council of Aging
Oh, that's the one.
at 10 o'clock. We had T-SWAG, board meeting. I think I'm covered with everything.
Commissioner Drensky.
On the 3rd, I'm not attending it, but there is an AMC leadership meeting at Grandview as well.
Is anyone going? If none of you are going, I'm not gonna
Okay.
put it down.
Don't put it down.
That same date, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got an emergency services board meeting of the executive committee
You said at 10?
at 10 o'clock, yes. On the 4th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, I've got a state emergency communications board meeting from the legislative committee. It's a phone conference at my house. On the 9th, for that board meeting, I will not be available all day. On the 10th, I'm supposed to speak in Staples at 10 o'clock in the morning at the CLC. On the 11th, at 6 PM in Randall, I have a trails meeting. And on the 12th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's an armor rack meeting.
Is there a Swanville Mount car crash anywhere?
There is at 10 o'clock in the morning on the 11th, I won't be able to make that.
Okay.
There is Swanville is having a mock car.
When is that?
10 o'clock in the morning on the 11th.
Do you want me to leave it on?
Will you put that on mine, Tabitha? That would be,
I will not be able to attend.
but that's in my district. I might have to make sure I show.
And Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
All right, and I'm good. All right, so
Can you tell me what the name of the one at Sourcewell is, Mike?
What is it? Is it a?
It's that, I think it's that recognition thing. Yeah.
So I can label it as that?
Yep.
Yeah,
Student recognition banquet.
Perfect.
that's what it is.
That's all I got.
You're lucky you didn't come on time.
Yep, well, because now we're done. We got that, you got me good to go.
Yep.
How about let's go for a building project update?
I may or may not have forgotten to text you until right at the last minute, so that could be my fault, Mike.
Morning, good afternoon, Mike. All right. Sure.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Good afternoon.
Here, I can pass that. I'm gonna pass it down. Oh, he's signing. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Just handing out the latest budget up to March 10th. So you can go ahead and take a look through it. If you got any questions, I can try to answer them. If not, building update. Currently, right now, we're setting casework in the basement, putting full ceiling tiles in. Next week, we're going to be hanging doors, hardware, and then on the 8th, we'll be starting carpet in the lower levels. So it's coming along real well, so.
It is coming along, and I was talking to Tabitha about possibly looking at what agenda items are going to be at the planning sessions in April. We do have 3 planning sessions, and I might utilize one of those for meeting over at the government center and taking a look at the boardroom space and kind of going through. We have a couple of questions on how, and suggestions on how we could do some different final decorating things and stuff, and just want to make sure if you care, you're able to influence that. So wanting to kind of let you know where you're at, but you'll be able to get a visual on what it's looking like and how it's working. So we'll see how the agenda items go. If there's other stuff scheduled, we'll meet here, but otherwise Mike seems to be doing okay.
Thanks, Deb.
Any other questions, Fred? No. Okay, all right.
Cool. Thank you.
Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Now you can speak about the next meeting.
Thank you for permission to speak. The only other item I have is the resolution for the closed executive session for the annual performance review. I can read it if you want, otherwise that's what you.
No, I'll make a motion.
Motion to close the meeting?
A motion, to close the meeting.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is closing the meeting at 12:57.